Welcome aboard the Bergen Railway. Settle into your seat now, feeling the cushion beneath you, the support of the backrest, the gentle give of the upholstery as your body relaxes into position. We are here in Oslo Central Station, platforms stretching before us, the tracks gleaming under the station lights, leading westward toward distant mountains and the sea. This journey will carry you across Norway, from the capital city nestled at the head of the Oslofjord to Bergen, the ancient city cradled between 7 mountains and the North Atlantic. 7 hours lie ahead, 7 hours of gentle motion, of landscapes flowing past the windows, of the eternal rhythm of wheels on rails, that ancient song that has lulled travelers for more than a century. The train begins to move, so slowly at first you might not notice, the platform beginning its backward slide, the station posts passing by, one by one, the departure almost imperceptible, gentle as breathing, smooth as falling asleep. The electric motors hum quietly beneath you, a low vibration you feel more than hear, a presence rather than a sound, the power that will carry us across Norway engaging now, pulling us forward, beginning the journey. The rhythm starts, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, wheels meeting rails at each joint, metal on metal, the sound as old as railways themselves, unchanged and unchanging. The same percussion that passengers heard in 1909 when this line first opened. The same rhythm that will carry future travelers across these mountains, eternal and reliable. Your companion for the next 7 hours. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Listen to it now. Feel it in your body. The gentle rocking motion, side to side, forward and back. The train swaying as it picks up speed. The motion steady and soothing, like being rocked in caring arms, like being cradled, safe and secure. Oslo slides past the windows now. Modern glass towers rise on one side, their facades reflecting the Nordic sky, clouds moving across mirrored surfaces, the city showing its contemporary face. On the other side, older neighborhoods cluster together, rooftops creating patterns of colors and angles, red tiles and gray slate, buildings that have stood for decades or centuries, the accumulated history of the city visible in their varied architecture. But we are leaving this behind, the urban landscape beginning to thin, buildings becoming lower, more spread out, giving way to trees and open space. The clickety-clack continues, steady, reliable, like a heartbeat, like breathing, in and out, forward and back. The rhythm becoming part of you now, your breath matching its pace perhaps, your heartbeat synchronizing, your body and the train becoming one system, moving together through space, through time, through the Norwegian landscape that begins to open before us. Trees appear now in greater numbers. Small clusters at first, growing into proper woodlands as we move away from the city center. Norwegian pines and spruces stand in dark green ranks marching up gentle hillsides, their needles pointing skyward, their trunks straight and tall. Between them, birch trees show their distinctive white bark, glowing pale against the darker conifers, their leaves rustling in breezes you cannot feel but can imagine, the birches marking transition zones, growing where other trees cannot, hardy and beautiful. Lakes begin to appear, glimpsed between trees, small bodies of water reflecting the sky like mirrors scattered across the landscape. Their surfaces are still, almost perfectly smooth, each one a piece of sky fallen to earth, blue or gray depending on the clouds above. The water so clear in these unpolluted lands that you could see straight through to the stones on the bottom if you were standing at their shores. But you are here on the train watching them slide past, one after another, each lake similar yet distinct, each one named and known to locals, anonymous to you, beautiful regardless. The rhythm continues unchanged. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The sound filling your awareness now, becoming your world. The steady percussion that marks distance traveled, that measures progress across the landscape, that provides the temporal structure for this journey. Each click a meter past, each clack another meter, the kilometers accumulating beneath you, Oslo falling further behind with every moment, Bergen drawing imperceptibly closer though still impossibly distant, hours away, the journey just beginning. Farmhouses appear in clearings, traditional Norwegian structures painted in reds and yellows and whites, their peaked roofs designed to shed heavy winter snow, their gardens stretching behind them. Barns stand nearby, solid and square, built to last centuries, built by hands that knew this work, that understood wood and weather, that created shelter for animals and storage for hay, that ensured survival through long winters when snow covered everything. These farms have been here for generations, the same families working the same land, the continuity stretching back centuries, forward into an unknowable future. The train rocks gently, side to side, the motion constant and soothing, your body swaying with it, no longer resisting, accepting the movement, becoming part of it. The rocking that reminds us of being held, of being carried, of surrendering control and trusting the motion to continue, to carry us safely, to deliver us to our destination without effort on our part, without worry, without concern. Just rest, just allow, just be carried across Norway by this train that has made this journey millions of times, that knows the route, that needs no guidance from you, no help, no attention. Just rest. The landscape opens gradually now, like a book turning its pages slowly, revealing new content while maintaining connection to what came before. We are entering the corridor that leads northwest into higher country, following the natural passage that rivers and ancient glaciers carved over millennia. To the right, the land rises in forested slopes, hills that will become mountains, terrain that grows more dramatic with every kilometer. To the left, water appears more frequently, streams and small rivers making their way toward the fjord, following gravity's pull, flowing eternally downward as water must, as water has done since this landscape emerged from beneath the ice sheets 10,000 years ago. The clickety clack continues, never varying, never pausing, the eternal rhythm that underlies this journey, that provides the foundation for everything else, the constant against which change is measured. The buildings change, the trees change, the water appears and disappears, but the rhythm remains, clickety clack, forever clickety clack, the sound becoming like silence in its constancy, becoming like your own breathing in its inevitability, becoming part of the background of existence, noticed only when you direct attention to it, otherwise simply present, simply there, simply continuing. A small town slides past, houses clustered around a crossroads, a church steeple rising above rooftops, the white spire pointing skyward, marking this place as different from the surrounding forest, as human rather than natural, as civilization carved from wilderness. The town lasts perhaps 2 minutes, buildings appearing and vanishing, the train moving steadily at its cruising speed, not fast by modern standards but fast enough, 60 or 70 kilometers per hour, the pace determined by curves and grades, by the terrain that cannot be ignored, that shapes the railway's route as it shapes everything here. The rhythm, always the rhythm, clickety-clack, your lullaby, your song, the sound that will accompany you across Norway, that will still be present hours from now when the landscape has transformed completely, when we have climbed to heights where trees cannot grow, when we have crossed the vast plateau and descended to the western fjords. The rhythm will remain, unchanged, unchanging, eternal. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Feel it in your bones now. Feel it in your breath. Let it guide you deeper into rest, into the peaceful state of being carried, of traveling without effort, of watching the world flow past while you remain still, seated, secure, safe. The train sways around curves, leaning slightly into each turn, the motion smooth and controlled, the engineers who designed this route understanding the physics of rails and wheels, understanding how to make the journey comfortable, how to prevent jolting or sudden movements, how to create motion that soothes rather than disturbs. Each curve presents new views, new arrangements of forest and water and sky, the landscape revealing itself in stages, showing different aspects as our angle of approach changes, as the light shifts, as our elevation slowly increases meter by meter, kilometer by kilometer, ascending so gradually you might not notice except that the air feels slightly different now, cleaner somehow, crisper, the first hints of altitude beginning to manifest. 40 kilometers from Oslo now, perhaps 30 minutes into our journey. 6.5 hours remaining. The beginning behind us, the middle stretching ahead, the end still impossibly distant, existing only as future possibility, as destination not yet real, Bergen being an idea rather than a place at this point, the present moment being all that truly exists, this train, this rhythm, this gentle motion through the Norwegian countryside. Drammen approaches. You can sense it before seeing it, the way the landscape changes slightly, the way farms multiply, the way human presence increases. This is Norway's 10th largest city, 60,000 people living where the Drammen River flows into the fjord, where timber was once shipped to the world, where industry and commerce created wealth, where people have gathered for centuries because rivers and harbors create opportunities, because water connects rather than separates, because geography shapes human settlement in patterns that repeat across the world. The station slides alongside now. Platform and passengers. People waiting to board, others stepping down with bags and backpacks. The universal choreography of train stations playing out here is everywhere. Embraces and handshakes, children running to parents, the rituals of arrival and departure, of hello and goodbye, the human connections that give meaning to travel, that make movement across distance purposeful, that transform transportation into relationship. The train pauses, doors open, doors close, new passengers find seats, stow luggage, settle in. Then the gentle lurch again, the resumed rhythm of motion, and we continue westward, leaving Drammen behind, carrying new companions on the journey, people with their own destinations, their own reasons for traveling, their own stories unfolding, all of us sharing this train, this route, this moment of passage across Norway. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm resumes never really paused, just quieter during our stop, now asserting itself again. The familiar sound, the constant companion, the backdrop to everything else. Your breathing matches it perhaps. In out, clickety clack. In out, clickety clack. The synchronization happening without intention, your body and the train finding their natural harmony, moving together through space, through the afternoon, through this journey that has only just begun. The landscape beyond Drammen transforms noticeably. We are following the Drammen River now, that ancient waterway that has shaped this valley since glaciers retreated. The river flowing strong, its current visible in the way it bends around rocks and curves, in the small rapids where water froths white over stones worn smooth by countless floods and seasons. This river has been highway and power source, has provided food and transport, has been constant presence in the lives of everyone who has lived in this valley. The river being more permanent than cities, more enduring than human civilizations, the water flowing now just as it flowed before humans arrived, just as it will flow after we are gone. Forests thicken on the hillsides, dense stands of pine and spruce climbing slopes, the trees closer together now, the canopy continuous, hiding the ground beneath, creating the darkness under the trees where moss grows thick and mushrooms push up through fallen needles. These are working forests, managed for timber, but old enough and extensive enough to feel wild, to serve as habitat for moose and deer, for foxes and hares, for owls and hawks, the wildlife existing invisibly in the green shadows, living their lives parallel to human activity but largely separate, the forest being their domain, their world. The clickety-clack continues, steady, unchanging, like time itself, like the flow of the river alongside, like your breath, the rhythm that structures everything, that provides the framework within which this journey occurs, that makes the passage across distance into something more than mere transportation, that transforms travel into experience, into opportunity for rest, for reflection, for this gentle drifting state between full consciousness and sleep, this peaceful traveling consciousness where thoughts slow and scatter, where the present moment expands to fill awareness, where the rocking motion and the rhythmic sound combine to create this particular state of being, this train-traveling consciousness that is its own distinct experience, different from any other possible only here, only now, only on this journey across Norway. The valley narrows and widens, the landscape's rhythm matching the train's rhythm somehow, everything moving together, everything connected, the oscillation between confinement and openness creating variation within continuity, change within stability. The paradox of traveling being that everything changes while you remain still, that the world flows past while you stay seated, that motion and stillness coexist. Rest now. Let the rhythm carry you. Let the gentle swaying rock you deeper into peace. The journey continues whether you watch or not, whether you pay attention or let your mind drift, whether you observe every detail or simply surrender to the motion. The train knows the route. The rails guide the way. You need do nothing but rest, nothing but be carried, nothing but allow this journey to unfold as it will, as it must, as it always does, Oslo to Bergen, across the spine of Norway, carried by the rhythm, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Beyond the river valley now, beyond Drammen's influence, we enter the Sokna Valley, a long corridor leading northwest into higher country. The train continues its steady pace, the rhythm unchanged, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, that eternal sound carrying you forward, carrying you upward though you cannot yet feel the climb, the grade being so gentle that only instruments can measure it, the ascent being patient, measured in hours rather than minutes, the engineers who designed this route understanding that gradual is sustainable, that slow climbing prevents strain, that patience reaches destinations just as surely as speed. The river beside the tracks is smaller here, faster, tumbling over rocks in its hurry to descend toward the sea. This water comes from the mountains ahead, from snowmelt and rainfall, gathering in streams that merge into this river, the flow constant, the current strong, the water cold and clear. In spring, when snow melts in quantity, this valley becomes a torrent, the river rising high, flowing swift and brown with sediment, carrying the mountains downward grain by grain, the erosion that continues always, that never stops, that will eventually wear even these ancient peaks down to plains given enough time, given millions of years geological timescales that make human history seem instantaneous. The clickety-clack continues. Your companion, your guide, the rhythm that structures time, that makes the passage of minutes perceptible, that transforms empty waiting into filled experience. Each click is a moment. Each clack is a heartbeat. Together they create the pulse of this journey, the temporal framework within which everything else occurs, the constant against which all change is measured. Mountains begin revealing themselves on both sides of the valley, not yet the high peaks but substantial hills that deserve consideration, that rise steeply from the valley floor, their slopes covered in forest up to a certain elevation. Above that line, trees cannot survive the cold and wind, the growing season too short, the conditions too harsh, only low shrubs and grasses able to persist, creating a different landscape, a transition from forest to tundra, from green to brown, from lush to stark. The train curves constantly, following the valley's natural bends, each curve offering new vistas, new arrangements of rock and water and forest. Looking back occasionally, you can see the track behind us curving through the landscape, the rails glinting in the light before trees block the view. Looking ahead, the valley seems to narrow, the mountains pressing closer, though this is partly illusion created by perspective, partly reality as we penetrate deeper into the high country. Lakes appear nestled in hollows between hills, their names known to locals but anonymous to you, their waters visited by few, their shores quiet except for birds and the occasional hiker. These are glacial lakes, carved by ice that was kilometers thick, ice that ground down mountains and gouged valleys and reshaped the entire landscape. When the ice retreated 10,000 years ago, water filled the depressions, creating these countless lakes that are one of Norway's defining features. These blue and green and gray jewels scattered across the landscape like offerings to the sky. We enter a tunnel, the Haversting Tunnel, 2 kilometers of darkness. The train's interior lights seeming bright now that external light is gone. The rough rock walls visible for moments as they flash past the windows. Tunnels are frequent on this line, 182 in total, accounting for many kilometers of the route. Each one required years of work in the early days. Men drilling by hand, setting explosive charges, clearing rubble, advancing slowly through solid rock, creating these passages through obstacles that would otherwise be impassable. Emerging from darkness into light, the landscape has shifted character. We are entering Hallingdal now, one of Norway's great mountain valleys, a corridor reaching deep into the high country. This valley has been a travel route for thousands of years, first for reindeer following ancient migration paths, then for humans hunting those reindeer, later for traders moving between east and west, and now for the railway and highway that run side by side, following those same ancient routes, the geography dictating the paths that all travelers must take. The river beside the tracks is the Hallingdalselva, which will accompany us for many kilometers now, sometimes close, sometimes distant, but always present, always flowing eastward while we travel west, carrying mountain water toward the distant sea. The river has shaped this valley, cutting it deeper over millions of years, carrying away sediment, creating the flat valley floor where towns and farms exist, where human settlement is possible in terrain that is otherwise too steep, too rocky, too inhospitable for agriculture or building. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues its eternal presence, never pausing, never varying. The heartbeat of this journey, the pulse that keeps time, that marks distance traveled, that provides the structure within which everything else unfolds. Your breathing has surely synchronized with it by now, in outmatching clickety-clack, your body and the train moving together, your consciousness and the motion becoming one system, inseparable, unified in this traveling state. A small village appears and vanishes. Fla, a cluster of houses near the station, church steeple rising white against the forest backdrop. This is farming and forestry country, places where winters are long and summers brief, where everyone knows everyone, where families have lived for centuries. The pace of life here differs from cities, slower, more connected to seasons and weather, to the eternal rhythms of planting and harvest, of animals and crops, of the patterns that agriculture has followed since humans first domesticated plants and animals. The valley widens somewhat beyond Fla, and farms multiply. Red barns and white farmhouses repeat at intervals, each with its own fields and pastures, each a complete world unto itself. Hay bales dot the fields, rolled into large cylinders and wrapped in white plastic that gleams in the light. These are winter food for cattle and sheep, each bale representing hours of work, preparation for the months when snow covers everything and animals must be fed from stored supplies. The careful planning that agricultural life requires, the thinking ahead that ensures survival. The elevation continues increasing, though still so gradually that you feel it only in subtle ways, the air perhaps slightly different, the light having a quality that suggests altitude, though you cannot quite name how it differs from the light at sea level. We are above 400 meters now, high enough that the growing season shortens noticeably, that frost comes earlier in autumn and lingers later in spring, that the margin between success and failure in agriculture narrows, making farming here more challenging, requiring hardiness in both plants and people. The clickety-clack persists, unchanging, eternal, the rhythm that has accompanied every moment of this journey, that will accompany every moment until we reach Bergen hours from now. The sound has perhaps faded from conscious awareness by now, becoming like your own heartbeat, noticed only when you direct attention toward it, otherwise simply present, simply part of the background of existence, the foundation that supports everything else. Nesbyen slides past, larger than Fla, almost 3,000 inhabitants, a regional center for this part of Hallingdal. The town spreads along the valley floor, buildings following the flat ground between mountains, the settlement constrained by geography, shaped by the available space, growing where it can rather than where it might prefer. This pattern repeats throughout Norway, human habitation fitting itself into whatever space the landscape permits, adapting to constraints rather than trying to overcome them. Beyond Nesbyen, the climb becomes slightly more apparent. Not dramatically so, not in ways that create discomfort, but looking out the window you can sense that the valley sides are steeper, that the river is further below us than it was, that we are rising into higher country. The engineer's careful grade continues doing its work, lifting us meter by meter, kilometer by kilometer, preparing us for the crossing of Norway's mountain spine that still lies ahead, that still waits hours in the future. The clickety-clack, the eternal rhythm, the sound that is no longer really sound but has become part of silence, part of the background hum of existence, noticed only when absent, otherwise simply present like gravity, like air, like time itself. The train rocks gently, side to side, the motion that has been with us since departure, that will remain until arrival, the swaying that soothes and lulls, that creates this particular state of consciousness, this traveling awareness that is neither fully awake nor quite asleep, this peaceful middle ground where thoughts drift and scatter, where the present moment expands to fill all awareness, where past and future fade, leaving only now, only this train, only this journey, only this gentle motion through the Norwegian landscape. GOL appears, sitting at the valley floor, elevation 200 meters, another regional center, slightly larger than Nesbyen, its station serving travelers changing trains or buses. The town passes by the windows, buildings and streets, and people going about their lives, their ordinary Saturday afternoon continuing whether we observe it or not, their existence independent of our journey yet briefly intersecting with it, the train connecting their isolated valley to the larger world, to Oslo and Bergen and all the stations between. Beyond GOL, the landscape takes on more austere character. Trees become smaller, more gnarled, shaped by wind and short growing seasons. Rock becomes more visible, granite and gneiss that have been here for billions of years, some of the oldest stone on Earth, formed when the planet was young, compressed and heated deep underground, then thrust upward by tectonic forces, then carved by ice into these shapes we see today. This rock will outlast mountains, will persist long after the current topography has eroded away, the stone being essentially eternal on any timescale that matters to humans. The clickety clack continues, must continue, will continue until the journey ends, the rhythm being fundamental, being the constant that makes all variables possible, being the foundation upon which this entire experience rests. Your body has surely surrendered completely to the motion by now, no longer resisting the sway, no longer tense against the rocking, simply moving with the train, accepting the motion as part of existence, as natural as breathing, as inevitable as time passing. Al Station comes into view, situated at 436 meters above sea level, marking the exact midpoint of the journey. From here to Oslo is the same distance as from here to Bergen, each roughly 250 kilometers. This geographical balance makes El significant beyond its small size, a turning point, the place where the journey shifts from climbing out of the east to climbing toward the plateau, from leaving behind to approaching ahead. Though the actual experience remains unchanged, the train continuing its steady pace, the rhythm persisting, the motion constant. The Hallingdalselva flows beside us still, but smaller now, closer to its source, fed by tributaries that drain the high mountains ahead. The water is extremely cold, barely above freezing even in summer, born from snowmelt and glacial ice, carrying that chill all the way down to the sea. In this water, fish hold position behind rocks, waiting for food to drift past, their existence being one of patience, of conserving energy, of taking what the river provides without wasting movement. Geilo appears ahead, the largest settlement we will encounter at this elevation. Almost 2,000 permanent residents, though that number increases dramatically in winter when the ski resort operates. This is one of Norway's premier winter sports destinations, with alpine slopes on the mountains flanking the valley and extensive cross-country trails spreading across the plateau above. The town has a prosperous air, buildings well-maintained, the infrastructure of tourism visible in hotels and shops and restaurants. The station at Geilo sits at 794 meters above sea level. We are approaching timberline now, that elevation where trees can no longer survive year-round. Already the forest is thinning, trees becoming shorter and more scattered. Birches appear, their white trunks stark against darker conifers. These trees marking the transition zone between forest and tundra. Above a certain height, not much higher now, the birches will vanish too, leaving only low shrubs and grasses and lichens, plants adapted to Arctic conditions despite being at relatively southern latitude. The clickety-clack, always the clickety-clack, the sound that has become like silence, like the space between thoughts, noticed only when attention focuses on it, otherwise simply present, simply continuing, the rhythm that structures this journey, that makes time perceptible, that transforms the passage of hours into measured experience rather than empty waiting. Beyond Geilo, the change accelerates. Within kilometers, Trees largely disappear, replaced by low vegetation that hugs the ground, staying below the worst winds, surviving in this harsh environment through adaptation and resilience. This is the edge of Hardangervidda Plateau now, Europe's largest high mountain plateau, stretching for more than 6,000 square kilometers, an area larger than many countries, a landscape unlike any other in Europe, ancient and vast and beautiful in its darkness. The train climbs more noticeably now, the grade steeper though still manageable, the engines working harder to maintain speed. You can sense the effort if you pay attention, the slight change in the sound, the way the motion feels different when climbing than when traveling on level ground. But the discomfort is minimal, the engineering sound, the climb being well within the train's capabilities, the ascent continuing steadily upward into the high country. Rest now. Let the rhythm carry you deeper. Let the gentle swaying rock you towards sleep. The journey continues. The climb persists. The plateau approaches. The clickety clack goes on, eternal, unchanging, your companion and guide, carrying you across Norway, lifting you toward the sky, toward the vast openness that awaits ahead, toward the high plateau where Norway shows its true character, where the land rises toward clouds, where winter dominates most of the year, where life persists despite conditions that would destroy the soft and the weak, where adaptation is necessity, where only the hardy survive, where beauty emerges from harshness, where the journey reaches its climax before beginning the long descent to the Western Sea. Clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack. Ostoset appears, scattered settlement of cabins and a hotel existing primarily to serve hikers and skiers who come to explore the plateau. In winter, this place is buried under meters of snow, accessible only by train, a white wilderness where the wind sculpts snowdrifts into fantastic shapes, where the temperature can drop to 30 or 40 degrees below zero, where survival requires knowledge and preparation. But now, in this moment, it is simply a brief pause in the landscape, buildings flashing past the windows, human presence minimal, temporary, almost insignificant against the vastness opening around us. The clickety-clack continues its eternal rhythm, unchanged by elevation, unaffected by the thinning air, constant as it has been since Oslo, as it will remain until Bergen. This sound is your anchor now, the fixed point in a changing world, the constant that allows you to recognize change, to measure transformation against something stable. The rhythm structures experience, makes the passage of time perceptible, transforms hours into moments strung together like beads on a string. Each click a bead, each clack another, the necklace of this journey growing longer with each passing kilometer. Hagestad follows, similar in character to Ostoset, another cluster of human habitation clinging to existence in this marginal environment. The station sits at 988 meters elevation, and looking out the window, the plateau spreads in all directions now, rolling away to distant horizons, a landscape of rocks and grass and shallow lakes, punctuated by low hills and occasional prominent peaks breaking the general flatness. This is ancient land, worn down by ice and time. Once, millions of years ago, this was a true mountain range, peaks perhaps as high as the Himalayas. But erosion has had its way, grinding down those heights, carrying away sediment grain by grain, until what remains is this relatively flat expanse. This peneplain that shows what mountains become when given enough time, when water and ice and wind work their patient transformation, reducing all heights to this rolling plateau. The vegetation here consists of hardy grasses, sedges, mosses, and lichens. In summer, the plateau bursts into subtle color, tiny flowers blooming in profusion, making the most of the short growing season, their blooms lasting weeks before winter returns. Arctic plants adapted to extremes of cold and wind, their roots spreading wide to gather moisture, their flowers bright to attract the few pollinating insects that can survive at this elevation. But the beauty is understated, requiring attention to appreciate, the colors muted, the forms low and unpretentious, the aesthetic being one of resilience rather than flamboyance. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, the rhythm persisting, must persist, will persist. Your breathing synchronized with it completely now, your heartbeat aligned, your consciousness merged with the motion, with the sound, with the endless forward progress through this vast open landscape. There is only the train now, only the motion, only the rhythm, only the gentle swaying that rocks you deeper into rest, into the peaceful traveling state that is neither fully awake nor quite asleep, that exists only here, only now, only on this journey across Norway. The plateau stretches endlessly. Looking out the window, the horizon seems impossibly distant, the sky enormous, the space overwhelming in its vastness. This is landscape that reduces humans to proper scale, that reminds us we are small, temporary, insignificant in the face of geological time and vast space. The rocks visible outside were here millions of years before humans evolved, will remain millions of years after we are gone. The plateau was carved by ice kilometers thick, by forces beyond human comprehension, shaped by processes operating over timescales that make civilizations seem instantaneous. Lakes appear frequently, their waters cold and dark, reflecting the sky like scattered mirrors across the plateau. Some are large enough to have names, others just anonymous pools filling depressions left by glacial ice. These waters host little life, the cold and nutrient-poor conditions limiting what can survive, but unique microorganisms live here, bacteria and algae adapted to extreme cold, existing at the very edge of where life is possible. Their presence testimony to life's remarkable ability to find footholds in even the harshest environments. The train continues its steady pace, the rhythm unchanged, the motion constant. Clickety clack, the sound like breathing now, like heartbeat, like the pulse of life itself, the rhythm that underlies everything, that structures all experience, that makes time perceptible and passage measurable. This rhythm has been with you for hours now, will remain for hours more, the constant companion that never leaves, never varies, never fails. The sky dominates here on the plateau, occupying more of the view than the land, clouds moving across vast space, their shadows racing across the ground, patterns of light and dark shifting constantly. The weather changes rapidly at this elevation, conditions transforming within minutes, clear skies giving way to fog or rain or snow, the climate being unpredictable, volatile, demanding respect. But now, in this moment, conditions are calm, the wind modest, visibility good, the plateau revealing itself fully, showing its true character, its vast emptiness, its subtle beauty, its harsh magnificence. Wild reindeer live here, thousands of them, one of Europe's largest populations. These animals migrate across the plateau following ancient routes, seeking grazing grounds, avoiding the worst weather. In winter, they paw through snow to reach lichens underneath. In summer, they spread across the plateau, taking advantage of the brief abundance. These are not the semi-domesticated reindeer of the far north, but truly wild animals, as they have been for thousands of years, perhaps the last large wild reindeer population in Europe, their existence here being remarkable, their survival against harsh conditions being testament to adaptation and resilience. Clickety clack, the rhythm continues, eternal, unchanging, the heartbeat of this journey, the pulse that measures time, that marks distance, that structures experience. Your body sways with the motion, your mind quiet, your thoughts scattered like clouds across the vast sky, insubstantial, transient, the present moment being all that truly exists, this train, this motion, this gentle rhythm carrying you across the plateau, across Norway, across this ancient landscape that has witnessed ice ages and their endings, that has seen species come and go, that will remain essentially unchanged long after humans have vanished from Earth. The tunnel ahead is Finn's Tunnel, 5 kilometers of darkness beneath the plateau. This is the longest tunnel on the line, boring through solid rock, eliminating what was once the most difficult section of track, a stretch frequently blocked by snow, where avalanches posed constant danger, where trains could be stranded for days waiting for tracks to be cleared. The tunnel, completed in the 1990s, solved these problems, improved reliability dramatically, made the journey safer and more predictable. The darkness swallows us now, the train's lights illuminating the rough rock walls flashing past. 5 kilometers of engineered space through mountain, testament to human determination and skill, to the refusal to accept natural barriers as final, to the drive to connect, to link, to overcome obstacles through ingenuity and effort. The rhythm continues unchanged in darkness. Clickety clack, clickety clack, the sound being even more present now that visual stimulation has ceased, the auditory sense dominating, the rhythm filling awareness, becoming everything, the pulse of existence itself, time made audible, motion made perceptible through sound. The train announcing its presence and progress through this eternal rhythm that has accompanied every moment of this journey, that will accompany every moment remaining until we reach Bergen and the motion finally ceases. Light appears ahead, growing brighter, the tunnel's end approaching, and we emerge at Finns Station, 1,222 meters above sea level, the highest point on the Bergen Railway, the highest station on any railway in Northern Europe. The platform extends into landscape that seems more Arctic than Alpine, more Greenland than Norway, a place at the edge of inhabitable country, the limit of where humans can maintain permanent presence without extreme effort. The station building stands solid against the elements, built to withstand winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, snow accumulating meters deep, temperatures plunging far below zero. Yet people live here year-round, maintaining the station, operating a hotel and hostel, guiding visitors who come to experience this unique environment. Their presence is testimony to human adaptability, to the ability to thrive even in marginal conditions, to create community even in isolation. Behind the station, visible when weather allows, rises Hardangerjokkulen, one of Norway's largest glaciers. The ice cap spreads across several peaks, a remnant of the great ice sheets that once covered all Scandinavia. Now reduced but still impressive, still ancient, still slowly carving at the rock beneath, still calving ice into streams that feed the rivers below. That glacier is thousands of years old, containing ice that fell as snow when ancient civilizations were just beginning, the frozen water being a time capsule, preserving bubbles of ancient atmosphere, pollen from long-dead plants, evidence of climates past. The clickety-clack resumes as the train departs Finns, the rhythm reasserting itself, the motion continuing, the journey proceeding. From here, we begin our descent toward the west coast, the long drop from this highest point down to sea level at Bergen, the elevation gained over hours being surrendered over hours, the patient descent matching the patient ascent, the engineering allowing gradual change rather than abrupt transition, the grade being carefully managed to ensure safety and comfort. The plateau continues for many kilometers yet, still high, still exposed, but imperceptibly sloping westward, draining toward the fjords. More tunnels appear as the line threads between hills, each tunnel a triumph of engineering, each passage through rock representing years of labor, tons of dynamite, countless worker hours, the accumulated effort of generations of engineers and laborers who built this railway across impossible terrain, who refused to accept that Norway's mountains were too high, its valleys too deep, its conditions too harsh, who persisted until the connection was made, until east and west were linked by steel rails. Lakes continue appearing, some large, some small, their waters feeding streams that flow westward, gaining volume as they descend, merging with other streams, becoming rivers, eventually reaching the sea. This is the Atlantic watershed now, the western slope of Norway, where all water flows toward the ocean, where the hydrological cycle proceeds from mountain to sea, from precipitation to evaporation, the endless circulation of water through atmosphere and land and ocean, the same molecules cycling repeatedly, the water you see outside having fallen as rain and flowed to sea and evaporated and fallen again countless times, the cycle being eternal, predating life, essential to life, continuing, regardless of human presence or absence. The clickety-clack persists, unchanged, eternal, the rhythm that has been with you since Oslo, that will remain until Bergen, the constant in a changing world, the fixed point against which all transformation is measured. Your consciousness has surely merged completely with the motion by now, your sense of self perhaps dissolving into the rhythm, into the gentle swaying, into the peaceful traveling state that erases boundaries between self and motion, between consciousness and experience, between the observer and the observed. There is only this moment now, only this rhythm, only this gentle forward progress across the plateau, across Norway, across this ancient landscape that cares nothing for human presence, that existed before us, that will continue after us, that simply is, eternally, indifferently, magnificently. Rest now. Let the rhythm carry you completely. Let the gentle motion rock you into deepest peace. The plateau continues spreading around you, vast and empty and beautiful in its darkness. The landscape showing what Earth looks like at the margins, where conditions push against the limits of what life can tolerate, where only the hardy survive, where beauty emerges from harshness, where the aesthetic is one of resilience and persistence rather than abundance and ease. This is Norway's true character revealed, the underlying reality beneath the coastal greenery and valley farms, the bones of the land exposed, the ancient foundation upon which everything else rests. Clickety clack, clickety clack, clickety clack, forever clickety clack. The rhythm eternal, carrying you onward, carrying you westward, carrying you across the plateau toward the descent that waits ahead, toward the western valleys and the final approach to Bergen, toward the journey's end that still lies ours in the future, Bergen being destination but not yet reality, still existing only as idea, as intention, as future possibility, the present moment being all that truly is, this train, this motion, this rhythm, this vast plateau, this peaceful traveling, through space and time and the Norwegian highlands. The plateau continues spreading endlessly around us, the train a tiny speck moving across this vast expanse, insignificant against the scale of the landscape, barely perceptible against the brown and gray and green that stretches to every horizon. The sky dominates everything here, occupying 3/4 of what you see through the windows, clouds moving across its vastness in patterns that shift and reform, never static, always changing, the atmosphere being alive and active above this ancient land. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues its eternal presence, unchanged by the vastness surrounding us, unimpressed by the scale of the plateau, simply continuing as it has continued since Oslo, as it will continue until Bergen, the sound being constant in a world of variables, being reliable in an uncertain environment, being your anchor, your touchstone, your connection to something stable and predictable. The train rocks gently side to side, the motion that has been with you for hours now, that has become so familiar it feels like your natural state, like the swaying is how humans are meant to move through the world, like stillness would be the aberration and motion the norm. Your body has surrendered completely to the rhythm, no longer resisting, no longer tense, simply moving with the train, swaying with each curve, rocking with each gentle oscillation, becoming one with the motion, merging with the journey. Lakes appear and disappear, their surfaces reflecting clouds and sky, mirrors scattered across the plateau, each one a portal to another world, an inverted reality where sky becomes water and clouds float in depths rather than heights. The waters are dark, almost black in some lights, holding secrets in their cold depths, hosting life forms adapted to conditions that would kill softer creatures. The lakes being harsh environments where only the specialized can survive. The vegetation remains low, hugging the ground, avoiding the wind that sweeps across the plateau with nothing to stop it, nothing to break its force. The air moving freely across this open expanse, gathering speed, carrying cold from distant places, creating conditions that test everything living here. The plants that survive do so through adaptation, through growing low, through developing thick cuticles and waxy coatings, through strategies that conserve moisture and resist cold, through being tough rather than delicate, hardy rather than beautiful in conventional ways. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The sound fills your awareness now, becomes your world, the rhythm being everything, the pulse that measures time, that marks distance, that structures experience. In and out, you breathe with it. In with clickety, out with clack. Your heartbeat aligns with it, your circulation synchronizes, your entire physiology in training to this external rhythm, your body and the train becoming one system, one organism moving through space and time together. The rocks visible through the windows are ancient beyond comprehension, formed billions of years ago when Earth was young, when continents were different shapes and different positions, when life was simple and confined to oceans, before plants colonized land, before animals followed, before anything resembling the current world existed. These rocks remember that ancient Earth, contain within their crystalline structure the record of unimaginable heat and pressure, of burial deep underground, of tectonic forces that built mountains since eroded away, of the vast slow processes that operate on geological timescales. The plateau was once mountains, high peaks rivaling the Himalayas perhaps, rising kilometers into the sky, dramatic and jagged, the landscape being vertical rather than horizontal. But millions of years of erosion wore those peaks down, ice and water and wind working ceaselessly, grinding away at stone, carrying sediment grain by grain toward the sea, reducing heights to this rolling expanse, this peneplain that shows what mountains become given enough time, that demonstrates the impermanence of even the most solid-seeming features. The clickety-clack persists, must persist, will persist, the rhythm being as eternal as the rocks, as constant as erosion, as reliable as physics, the sound that has accompanied every moment since Oslo, that will accompany every moment until Bergen, that structures this journey, that makes the passage across distance into something more than mere transportation, that transforms travel into meditation, into this peaceful state between waking and sleeping. Your eyes might be closing now or might be open but unseeing, the visual input registering but not being processed, the images flowing past without creating thoughts or reactions, the landscape being present but not demanding attention, allowing you to drift, to let consciousness soften and spread, to exist in this peaceful liminal state that train travel creates, this unique form of awareness that is possible nowhere else, that exists only here, only now, only in this motion, only with this rhythm. The wind outside moves clouds across the sky, creates patterns of light and shadow racing across the ground. The sun breaking through in places, illuminating patches of plateau in theatrical spotlights while leaving other areas in gray dimness. The play of light creates drama from what might otherwise seem monotonous, the changing illumination revealing contours and textures, making visible the subtle variations in terrain that uniform lighting would hide, the landscape being more complex than it first appears, repaying attention with discovered detail. Streams appear occasionally, cutting channels through the plateau, flowing in depressions, seeking the lowest route, obeying gravity's inexorable pull toward the sea. These waters are cold, just above freezing, born from snowmelt and rain, carrying no sediment in their clarity. The plateau having little soil to erode, only rock and the thin layer of vegetation that clings to it. The streams being pure in their coldness, clean in their flow, arctic in character despite being at relatively southern latitude. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues, eternal, unchanging, the pulse of existence itself, the heartbeat of this journey, the sound that has become like silence in its constancy, noticed only when attention focuses on it, otherwise simply present, simply continuing, the foundation upon which everything else rests, the ground base against which all variation plays out, the constant that allows variables to be perceived as such. The emptiness of the plateau creates a particular psychological state, the absence of visual clutter allowing the mind to quiet, the lack of stimulation permitting thoughts to slow and scatter, the vastness creating space for consciousness to expand, to fill the available volume, to become as large as the landscape, merging with the space, dissolving boundaries between self and environment, between observer and observed, between the one who travels and the space through which travel occurs. Small birds appear occasionally, hardy species adapted to plateau conditions, their lives spent in this harsh environment, finding food where it seems none exists, surviving winters that kill less adapted creatures. Their presence testimony to life's remarkable persistence, its ability to colonize even marginal environments, to find niches even in places that seem inhospitable, to thrive where merely surviving seems achievement enough. The train continues its steady pace, the speed unchanging, the motion constant, the rhythm eternal. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The sound like breathing now, like the pulse of blood through veins, like the firing of neurons in the brain, like the fundamental processes of life itself, the rhythm being biological as much as mechanical, being organic as much as manufactured, being natural despite its technological origin. Reindeer might be visible in the distance, their forms small against the vast landscape, moving slowly across the plateau, grazing on lichens and grasses, their antlers visible even at distance, their adaptation to this environment complete, their bodies designed for cold and wind, for sparse food and long winters, for survival in conditions that would destroy domestic animals, the reindeer being truly wild, truly adapted, truly belonging to this place in ways that humans never can, visitors. Though humans might be, the reindeer being native, being part of the ecosystem, being integrated rather than merely present. The clickety-clack persists through everything, through changing light and moving clouds, through bird sightings and reindeer glimpses, through the passage of kilometers and the advance of hours, the rhythm being the one constant, the fixed point, the reliable presence that never varies, never fails, never stops, the sound that will continue until journey's end, that will carry you across this plateau, that will accompany you through the descent ahead, that will deliver you to Bergen through its persistent, patient progress. Rest now into the rhythm. Let it carry you completely. Let the gentle swaying rock you deeper into peace. Let the vast emptiness of the plateau create emptiness in your mind. Space for rest, room for restoration, opportunity for the deep quieting that sleep requires, that healing demands, that renewal needs. The plateau continues around you, vast and ancient and indifferent, beautiful in its harshness, magnificent in its scale, eternal in its slow changing, the land being itself completely, being Norway in its essential character, being the foundation upon which everything else rests. Clickety-clack, 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 forever clickety-clack. The rhythm, your lullaby, your song, your companion through this journey, carrying you onward, carrying you westward, carrying you across Norway's spine, across this ancient plateau, toward the descent that waits ahead, toward Bergen, toward rest, toward arrival, toward completion, but not yet, still moving, still traveling, still crossing this vast expanse, still rocking gently, still breathing with the rhythm, still being carried across the plateau, across Norway, across time itself. It seems the journey being eternal in this moment, being infinite, being all that exists, being everything, being this rhythm, this motion, this gentle rocking, this peaceful traveling state, this rest in motion, this moving meditation, this train, this plateau, this moment, this breath, this rhythm, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Tiant, being as measured as the rhythm itself, nothing abrupt, nothing sudden, everything flowing, everything smooth, everything gentle. Your breathing has become so shallow and regular it barely moves your chest. The peaceful state between waking and sleeping having deepened, consciousness having dimmed without extinguishing, awareness continuing but softened, thoughts arising but not persisting, images appearing but not demanding attention. The mental state being fluid rather than fixed, being open rather than focused, being receptive rather than active. The traveling consciousness that is possible only in motion, only with rhythm, only on this journey across Norway. The railway continues threading through this landscape, following the most gradual descent, avoiding steep grades through careful routing. The engineers who designed this line having studied the terrain for years, having planned routes and calculated grades, having determined the path that makes this crossing possible. Their work visible in how the track curves and climbs and descends, in how it finds the way through terrain that seems to resist passage, their skill being evident in how comfortable this journey is, in how the motion remains gentle despite the dramatic changes in elevation and terrain. Small clusters of buildings appear occasionally, mountain huts or seasonal dwellings, places used by hikers or herders or those who work at the few installations that exist at this elevation. Humanity maintaining minimal presence here, respecting the harshness, understanding the limits, not trying to establish permanent, substantial settlements in places so marginal, so challenging, so demanding of those who attempt to live here. The clickety-clack persists, must persist, will persist, the rhythm being as inevitable as the journey itself, as certain as the arrival in Bergen that waits hours ahead, as reliable as the rails beneath the wheels, as constant as the motion that has continued since Oslo, as eternal as the sound that has accompanied every moment of this crossing. The rhythm being the journey's signature, its sonic identity, its auditory essence, the sound that makes this experience recognizable, that distinguishes train travel from all other forms of movement. The plateau is releasing you now, gradually, slowly, letting you descend from its heights, allowing you to drop toward the western valleys, the land being generous in its way, being accommodating, providing this gentle transition rather than abrupt cliff, offering graduated descent rather than sudden drop, the landscape showing mercy perhaps, or perhaps simply being what it is, shaped by forces that created gentle slopes rather than steep faces, the geology being accident rather than intention, being circumstance rather than design. More tunnels appear as terrain becomes more varied, short passages through hills, brief darknesses that interrupt the light, moments when the view outside vanishes and the train's interior lights reflect in the windows, showing you your own reflection, showing the other passengers, showing the interior of this carriage that has been home for hours now, familiar despite being temporary, comfortable despite being transient, the space having become yours through occupation, through the hours spent. Here, through the journey shared with this particular combination of people in this particular train on this particular day. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues through darkness and light, through tunnels and open space, through the gradual transformation of landscape from plateau toward mountains, the sound being constant regardless of context, being unchanging despite shifting conditions, being reliable even as everything else transforms, the rhythm being your anchor, your touchstone, your connection to continuity in a world of change. The air grows slightly warmer as elevation decreases, the temperature rising almost imperceptibly, degree by degree, the cold of the heights giving way to the more moderate conditions of lower altitudes, the atmosphere becoming denser, richer in oxygen, easier to breathe though the change is too gradual to notice consciously, too subtle to register except through accumulated effect, the body adjusting automatically, responding to conditions without requiring conscious direction or awareness. Birch trees begin reappearing, first as isolated individuals, then in small groups, the white bark standing out against darker rock and green vegetation, these trees being pioneers, being the first to colonize as conditions permit, being hardy enough to survive at treeline but not requiring the extreme adaptations needed for life above it, the birches marking transition, indicating that true forest waits below, that the descent is proceeding, that the plateau is being left behind. The clickety-clack continues its eternal song, the rhythm that has been with you since departure, that will remain until arrival, that structures this journey, that makes time perceptible, that transforms the passage of hours into measured experience. The sound being fundamental now, being essential, being as necessary as breathing, as inevitable as heartbeat, as natural as the circulation of blood. The rhythm having become biological, having merged with physiology, having integrated completely, with your body's own rhythms and patterns. Rest deeper now. Let the rhythm carry you completely. Let the gentle motion rock you toward the deepest peace. The plateau is behind you, the descent beginning, Bergen drawing nearer though still hours distant. The journey continuing, the motion persisting, the rhythm eternal, clickety-clack, carrying you onward, carrying you westward, carrying you down from the heights, down toward the valleys, down toward the sea, down toward Bergen, down toward rest, down toward completion, but not yet, still traveling, still moving, still rocking gently through the Norwegian landscape, still being carried by this rhythm, this eternal clickety-clack, this sound that is your companion, your guide, your lullaby, your song. The descent accelerates now, not dramatically, not in ways that create discomfort, but noticeably, the grade steeper though still gentle, the downward progress more evident, the elevation being surrendered more quickly as the terrain steepens, as the western slopes assert themselves, as the geography shifts from plateau to true mountain valleys, the landscape becoming more vertical, more dramatic, more Norwegian in the way that photographs and postcards show this country, the scenery becoming iconic, becoming representative, becoming what people imagine when they think of Norway. Clickety-clack, The rhythm continues unchanged despite the steeper grade, the sound being constant regardless of slope, reliable regardless of terrain. The wheels meeting rails at the same frequency whether climbing or descending or traveling on level ground. The rhythm being independent of gradient, being a function of speed and rail joint spacing rather than elevation change. The sound persisting, must persist, will persist. The eternal companion that structures this journey, that makes time perceptible, that transforms travel into meditation. Trees multiply rapidly now, the forest closing in on both sides of the track, the canopy beginning to form overhead, the vegetation exploding into abundance as conditions improve, as temperature moderates, as moisture increases, as soil deepens, as all the factors that support plant growth align and intensify, the forest being dense and lush, being green and living, being so different from the sparse plateau vegetation that the contrast seems almost shocking, the change being dramatic despite its gradualism, the transformation being complete despite its patience. Your body continues its gentle swaying, the motion so deeply integrated now that it continues even through sleep if sleep has claimed you, your muscles maintaining balance automatically, your inner ear compensating for movement without conscious direction, your entire system adapted completely to this traveling state, this moving equilibrium that has become your baseline, your normal, your natural condition for these hours of crossing Norway. The sound of water grows louder, more present, waterfalls becoming frequent on the mountainsides, streams rushing beside the tracks, the western rainfall manifesting in countless flows, the moisture that makes these slopes so green being visible now in its movement toward the sea. Gravity pulling all water downward, every stream and river and waterfall being participant in the same journey we are making. All of us descending from the heights, all moving westward, all being drawn toward the Atlantic, toward the ocean that waits at Bergen, that defines the western coast, that makes Norway. Maritime that shapes climate and culture and history. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The sound merges with the water sounds now, the rhythm of rails blending with the rhythm of falling water, both being percussion, both being patterns, both being natural despite one being manufactured. The combined soundscape creating an acoustic environment that soothes and lulls, that supports rest, that encourages the deepening of peace, the letting go of tension, the surrender to motion and sound and the traveling consciousness that exists nowhere else, that is possible only here, only now, only on this train descending through western Norway. The valleys narrow, their sides steepening, rock walls rising almost vertically in places, the glacial carving being evident, the ice having cut deep trenches, having excavated enormous quantities of stone, having created these dramatic forms through its slow, powerful movement, the landscape being sculpture on continental scale, being art created by physics and time, being beauty emerging from forces that care nothing for aesthetics, that create form through mechanical process rather than conscious design. Moss covers everything at this elevation, coating tree trunks in thick layers, draping from branches, carpeting rocks and fallen logs, the green being ubiquitous, being inescapable, being the dominant color, the moisture supporting its growth, the moss in turn holding moisture, creating habitat for countless tiny organisms, being foundation for complex ecosystems that exist in miniature, whole worlds living in what appears from train windows as simple green coating. The clickety-clack persists through all of this, through the narrowing valleys and vertical walls, through the moss and waterfalls and rushing streams, through the changing light and gathering moisture, through the transformation of landscape from exposed plateau to sheltered valley. The rhythm being constant, being unchanging, being reliable, being the fixed point against which all change is measured, being the anchor that prevents disorientation, being the thread that maintains continuity. Through transformation, your breathing has become so quiet, so shallow, so gentle that it barely qualifies as breathing, the air moving in and out in the smallest quantities, your body's needs being minimal in this resting state, your metabolism having slowed, your oxygen consumption having decreased, all systems operating at reduced capacity, maintaining life but not demanding resources, the peaceful state between waking and sleeping requiring little, consuming little, being efficient and quiet and still despite the motion that continues, despite the rocking that persists, despite the rhythm that goes on endlessly. Ferns appear in the understory, their fronds spreading wide to catch filtered light. These plants being ancient in form, being essentially unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Their design being so successful it requires no modification, no improvement, no evolution. The ferns being perfect expressions of their niche, being optimally adapted, being complete in themselves. Their presence adding texture to the forest, adding another shade of green to the overwhelming greenness. Adding another layer to the complexity that characterizes these western forests. The train curves constantly now, the track following the valley's twists and turns, the route being determined entirely by topography, the engineers having no choice but to accept the terrain's dictates, to follow the path the land permits, the railway being guest here rather than master, being accommodated by geography rather than imposing itself upon it, the relationship between infrastructure and landscape being one of adaptation rather than domination. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues, must continue, will continue until journey's end. The sound being so familiar now it might continue in your mind even after the physical sound ceases. The way waves continue in your inner ear after leaving the ocean. The way rhythm persists in neural patterns established through hours of repetition. The clickety-clack becoming part of your consciousness, becoming internalized, becoming yours rather than merely the train's, the rhythm being shared now, being communal being. The bond between you and this journey, between your consciousness and this experience. Small villages appear briefly, clusters of houses clinging to valley sides wherever terrain permits flat ground. Human settlements being marginal here, being difficult, being constrained by geography. The people who live here having accepted limitations, having adapted to constraints, having made lives in places where space is scarce and isolation is normal, where winter is long and access is limited, where traditional patterns persist because change is difficult, where community matters, because neighbors are few and distant. The light filtering through the forest canopy creates patterns of bright and shadow, dappled illumination that shifts constantly as the train moves, as branches sway in wind, as clouds move across the sun. The play of light being beautiful, being mesmerizing, being hypnotic in its constant change. The patterns drawing the eye, capturing attention, then releasing it, allowing thoughts to drift, allowing consciousness to soften, allowing the peaceful state to deepen further, allowing rest to become more complete. The clickety-clack merges with heartbeat now, the two rhythms having synchronized completely, being indistinguishable, being one pulse, one beat, one rhythm that is both mechanical and biological, both external and internal, both objective and subjective, the boundary having dissolved, the separation having vanished, the distinction having become meaningless, there being only rhythm now, only pulse, only the eternal beat that carries you forward, that carries you westward, that carries you down. Through these valleys toward the sea. Waterfalls increase in size and frequency, some being modest cascades of a few meters, others being dramatic falls of dozens or hundreds of meters, the water dropping in single plumes or cascading in steps, creating mist at their bases, generating negative ions that some believe enhance mood and health, the falls being beautiful and powerful, being manifestations of gravity and hydrology, being the inevitable result of steep terrain and abundant moisture, being characteristic of Western Norway, being signature features of this landscape. The forest continues densening, the trees growing taller and thicker, the canopy becoming more continuous, the understory darkening as less light penetrates from above, the ecosystem being mature and complex, being developed over centuries or millennia, being stable until disturbance, being self-sustaining through cycles of growth and decay, of life and death, of new trees replacing old, of succession proceeding according to patterns established over evolutionary time. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, the rhythm being everything now, being all that exists, being the totality of experience, the sound filling consciousness completely, leaving no room for thought, no space for worry, no capacity for anything but this present moment, this eternal rhythm, this endless pulse that has carried you across Norway, that has accompanied every moment since Oslo, that will accompany every moment until Bergen, the rhythm being alpha and omega, being beginning and end, being the structure within which this Journey occurs within which this experience unfolds, within which this crossing of Norway happens. The valleys continue deepening, the descent continuing, the elevation decreasing steadily though still gradually, the change being measured in hundreds of meters over tens of kilometers, the drop being significant in total but gentle in grade, the engineering allowing comfortable descent, the track never becoming too steep, never creating anxiety, never suggesting danger, the journey being safe and smooth and gentle despite the dramatic terrain, despite the vertical geography, despite the challenges that this landscape presents to those who would build railways through it. Rest now completely. Let the rhythm carry you into deepest peace. Let the gentle swaying rock you into total surrender. Let the sound of water and wheels merge into single symphony. Let the green forest fill your vision even through closed eyes. Let the moisture-laden air fill your lungs with each shallow breath. Let the descent continue carrying you downward, carrying you westward, carrying you toward Bergen, toward the sea, toward arrival, toward rest, toward the completion of this journey that has carried you across Norway, across the spine of the land, across mountains and plateaux and valleys, across time itself it seems, the journey being eternal in this moment, being infinite, being all that exists, being this rhythm, this motion, this gentle descent through western valleys, this clickety-clack, this eternal clickety-clack, this pulse, this rhythm, this heartbeat, this breath, this moment, this peace, this rest, this journey, this Norway, this train, this rhythm, clickety-clack, 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 forever, eternally, unchanging, constant, reliable, your companion, your guide, your lullaby, your song, carrying you onward, carrying you down, carrying you home to Bergen, carrying you toward rest, toward peace, toward arrival, toward completion, but not yet, still. Moving, still traveling, still descending through these deep green valleys toward the Western Sea. The train carries more than just you on this journey across Norway. Other passengers occupy seats throughout the carriages, each person traveling for their own reasons, each carrying their own stories, each experiencing this same journey differently. The shared physical space containing multiple separate realities, multiple individual experiences, the train being both singular vehicle and collection of private worlds. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues for everyone equally, democratic in its constancy, offering the same sound to every passenger regardless of ticket class or seat position. The clickety-clack being universal experience, being the common thread that connects all who ride this train, that binds strangers together through shared sensation, through collective immersion in this traveling rhythm that knows no distinctions, recognizes no hierarchies, simply continues for all. In the seat across the aisle, an elderly woman gazes out the window, her eyes following the landscape that flows past, her expression peaceful, perhaps remembering other journeys on this line, perhaps recalling times when she was younger, when the world was different, when this same route carried her to different destinations for different purposes. She has ridden this train dozens of times, perhaps, hundreds of times maybe, the Bergen Railway being part of her life's fabric, being woven into her personal history, connecting her present to her past through the unchanging route, through the familiar stations, through the rhythm that has accompanied her across decades. The clickety-clack rocks her gently, the same rhythm that rocks you, the same motion that sways her body as it sways yours, the train making no distinction between passengers, treating all equally, carrying all westward with the same patient persistence, the same gentle motion, the same eternal rhythm that has defined this journey since Oslo, that will continue defining it until Bergen. Near the window ahead, a young couple sits close together, speaking quietly, their conversation inaudible over the train sounds, their words being private, being theirs alone, but their body language suggesting comfort with each other, suggesting relationship, suggesting connection. Perhaps they are going to Bergen for a weekend, perhaps visiting family, perhaps simply wanting to ride this famous route together, to share the experience, to create a memory that will belong to both of them, that will bind them together through shared sensation. They sway together with the train's motion, leaning into curves in unison, their bodies synchronized not just with the train but with each other, the rhythm becoming theirs, the motion being shared. the journey creating intimacy through proximity and time, through hours spent side by side watching the same landscapes flow past the same windows, through the peaceful traveling state that softens boundaries, that encourages quietness, that allows simply being together without needing to do or say anything particular. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues for them as for you, as for the elderly woman, as for all the other passengers scattered through the carriages. The sound being omnipresent, being unavoidable, being the acoustic signature of this journey. The sonic environment that contains all conversations and silences, all thoughts and observations, all the private internal experiences that happen within this shared public space. A businessman works on a laptop several rows ahead, his fingers moving across the keyboard, his attention focused on the screen, apparently unaffected by the journey, treating the train as merely mobile office, as transportation between meetings rather than as experience itself. Yet even he sways with the motion, even his body responds to the rhythm, even his unconscious systems adapt to the movement, the train claiming him despite his attention being elsewhere, the journey affecting him whether he acknowledges it or not. The clickety-clack penetrates his concentration surely, enters his awareness despite his focus, becomes part of his working environment, the rhythm perhaps affecting his typing speed, his thought patterns, his productivity in ways he doesn't recognize, the train's influence being subtle but real, being present even when unacknowledged, the journey asserting itself through the body's responses, through the rhythm that structures time, that measures passage, that marks progress across Norway. A family occupies a cluster of seats farther down the carriage, parents and children traveling together. The youngest child sleeping despite the daytime, curled in a seat with a jacket as pillow. The child's body completely surrendered to sleep, completely relaxed, the motion apparently soothing rather than disturbing, the rhythm and swaying creating perfect conditions for rest, the child demonstrating what you feel, what draws you deeper into this peaceful state, what makes train sleep so deep and satisfying. The parents watch their children with the particular expression parents have, mixture of love and responsibility, of protectiveness and patience, of tiredness and contentment. Their faces showing the complexity of parenthood, the simultaneous joy and exhaustion, the fulfillment and challenge. They have been managing children on this train for hours now, have brought snacks and activities, have answered questions about the landscape, have taken turns walking restless kids through the carriages, have done the invisible labor that family travel requires. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm has probably become lullaby for their children, has probably accompanied games and stories, has probably been background to snacks and small conflicts and resolutions, has probably been constant presence through their family's journey. The sound being neutral witness to all that happens, being steady accompaniment to the dramas and comedies of family travel, being the foundation upon which their day has built itself. An older man sits alone by the window, a book open on his lap but unread currently, his gaze directed outward, watching the forests and valleys flow past, his expression contemplative, thoughtful, his stillness suggesting comfort with solitude, suggesting someone accustomed to his own company, to traveling alone, to finding contentment in observation and thought rather than requiring constant external stimulation or social interaction. He has the look of someone who has ridden trains many times, who understands train travel's particular pleasures, who knows how to settle into the rhythm, how to let the journey unfold at its own pace, how to simply be present without needing to control or manage or direct the experience. The wisdom of experienced travelers being visible in their relaxation, in their patience, in their ability to surrender to the journey's time rather than imposing their own schedules and expectations. The clickety-clack accompanies his thoughts, provides rhythm to his internal monologue, creates structure for his contemplation. The sound being companion to solitary travelers, being presence that prevents loneliness without demanding interaction, being the perfect amount of ambient stimulation, enough to prevent empty silence, not enough to intrude on private thought, the rhythm being ideal background for reflection, for meditation, for the peaceful internal wandering that train journeys enable. Two students sit together across the aisle, backpacks stowed overhead, hiking boots visible beneath their seats. planning written in Norwegian spread between them on the fold-down table, clearly discussing routes or itineraries. Their conversation animated despite the late afternoon. Their energy suggesting youth, suggesting excitement about adventures ahead, suggesting the freedom and possibility that travel represents when you are young and the world seems open and full of opportunities. They point at the landscape occasionally, identifying features, discussing trails perhaps, planning hikes, their journey on this train being means to other journeys on foot, the Bergen Railway being portal to the mountains, being access to wilderness, being the infrastructure that makes deeper exploration possible, that connects urban centers to wild places, that allows those without cars to reach trailheads, that democratizes access to nature. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues for them as for everyone. As for all who ride this train, the sound being universal, being shared, being the common experience that connects all these separate individuals, all these different stories, all these various purposes and destinations, the clickety-clack being the thread that runs through all their experiences, the constant that appears in all their memories of this journey, the signature that will identify this day as the day they rode the Bergen Railway, the marker that will distinguish this travel from all other travel. Through the carriage, a conductor moves slowly, checking tickets, answering questions, offering assistance, his uniform marking his role, his measured pace suggesting someone who has walked these aisles thousands of times, who knows every station, every tunnel, every curve of this route, who could probably navigate it blindfolded, who has dedicated years or decades to this line, to serving passengers, to maintaining the human connection that makes train travel different from other forms of transportation. He moves with the train's rhythm, his body automatically compensating for curves and motion, his balance perfect despite the swaying, his adaptation complete, the train being his workplace, his second home perhaps, the Bergen Railway being not just route but career, not just infrastructure but life's context, the conductor's identity being intertwined with this train, with this journey, with the thousands of passengers he has served across the years. The clickety-clack is his constant companion, has been for however many years he has worked this line, will be until he retires, the rhythm being soundtrack to his working life, being the pulse that measures his days, that structures his hours, that marks the passage of his career one journey at a time, one crossing of Norway at a time, one Oslo to Bergen trip at a time, the accumulated journeys adding up to a life spent in motion, spent serving others' travel, spent ensuring that this connection between east and west continues functioning, continues carrying passengers safely and comfortably across the Norwegian mountains. A woman reads a novel, completely absorbed, her focus total, the outside world apparently invisible to her, the landscape flowing past unnoticed, the other passengers irrelevant, only the book existing for her, only the story matching, the train being merely quiet space where reading can happen undisturbed, where hours can pass in fictional worlds, where imagination can unfold without interruption, the journey being protection from distraction rather than experience in itself. Yet even she sways with the motion, even her body responds to the rhythm, even her unconscious systems track the movement and maintain balance, the train claiming her despite her attention being elsewhere, the journey affecting her whether she notices or not, the clickety-clack entering her awareness at some level even if her conscious mind remains focused on the page, the rhythm becoming part of her reading experience, becoming associated with this particular book, this particular story, the memory of reading it forever connected to the memory of motion, of swaying, of the eternal clickety-clack. The rhythm continues for all of them, for every passenger, for the conductor, for the driver invisible in the front cabin who guides this train across Norway, who manages speed and braking, who watches signals and track conditions, who bears responsibility for everyone aboard, who is trained for years to earn the right to operate this train on this challenging route, whose skill and attention ensure that the journey continues safely, that all these separate stories being lived in the carriages reach their intended conclusions in Bergen. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, the rhythm being shared experience, being collective immersion, being the sound that unites all these individuals, that connects all these separate journeys into one journey, that makes this train not just collection of strangers but temporary community. Group of people who share this time, this space, this motion, this crossing of Norway, this descent from plateau to coast, This experience of being carried across mountains by steel and electricity, and the accumulated skill of everyone who maintains this railway, who keeps it functioning, who ensures that this connection persists, that this journey continues being possible, that people can still cross Norway by rail as they have for more than a century. Rest deeper now, knowing you are not alone in this journey, knowing others share this rhythm, this motion, this peaceful traveling state, knowing the train carries all of you together westward, toward Bergen, toward the sea, toward rest. The train that carries you is more than just metal and wheels, more than engineering and electricity, more than the sum of its mechanical parts. This train has a history, a lineage, a story that stretches back more than a century to when the first locomotives pulled the first carriages across these newly laid rails, when steam engines labored up the grades that electric motors now climb effortlessly, when the journey took longer and was less comfortable but was no less remarkable, no less an achievement of human determination and skill. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm has been the same since the beginning, has been constant across all the generations of trains that have run this route, steam and diesel and electric all producing the same sound, all creating the same rhythm where wheels meet rails, the clickety clack being timeless, being unchanged by technology, being the one element that connects the earliest passengers to you, that allows them to have experienced something essentially identical to what you experience now, the rhythm being bridge across time, being constant across change. The carriage around you shows where from countless journeys, countless passengers, the seats slightly compressed from years of use, the floor showing patterns of traffic, the windows bearing scratches too fine to notice unless you look closely, the accumulated evidence of service, of miles traveled, of people carried, each tiny mark being story, being moment, being individual journey that contributed its small wear to the overall aging, the train being archive of travels, being record of journeys written in material rather than words. The electric motors beneath you hum quietly, steady vibration felt more than heard, the power flowing from overhead lines through transformers and converters, being regulated and controlled, being applied to wheels through complex systems that manage traction and speed, that prevent slipping, that ensure smooth acceleration and braking, the technology being sophisticated though invisible, being reliable though hidden, working constantly to ensure your journey continues safely and comfortably. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The wheels themselves are marvels of engineering. Their steel composition designed to withstand enormous forces, their profiles shaped to maintain proper contact with rails, their surface hardened to resist wear, each while being precisely manufactured, being carefully maintained, being regularly inspected, the safety of every journey depending on these circular pieces of steel that seem simple but embody decades of metallurgical knowledge and engineering refinement. The suspension system that connects wheels to carriage absorbs irregularities in the track, smooths the ride, prevents the harsh jolting that would occur without it, the springs and dampers working constantly, responding to every variation in the rails, every joint, every curve, their action being automatic and continuous, being mechanical intelligence that requires no conscious direction, being designed response that serves passengers without their awareness or appreciation. Above you, the overhead wiring supplies power, the pantograph on the locomotive maintaining contact as the train moves, the connection being critical yet vulnerable, being essential yet exposed, the system working because of careful design and constant maintenance, because workers inspect and repair and replace components before they fail, because the railway understands that prevention is cheaper and safer than reaction, that reliability requires investment and attention. The clickety-clack continues regardless of these technical details, continues whether you understand the systems or not, continues because wheels and rails create it inevitably, the sound being byproduct of motion, being unavoidable consequence of steel rolling on steel, being the signature of rail travel, the identifying characteristic that distinguishes trains from all other vehicles, that makes this form of travel unique, recognizable, distinct. The braking system stands ready though when used at the moment, sophisticated controls that can modulate pressure precisely, that can slow the train smoothly or stop it quickly as circumstances require, the multiple redundant systems ensuring that the train can always be controlled, can always be brought to safe stop, the engineering being paranoid in the best sense, being unwilling to accept single points of failure, being designed for safety above all else. The windows through which you watch the landscape are multi-layered, the glass engineered to insulate and protect, to reduce noise and retain temperature, to remain clear despite weather, to resist impact from debris, each pane being more complex than it appears, being result of research and development, being improvement over earlier simpler windows, the evolution of train technology being continuous, being gradual, being accumulation of countless small enhancements that together create the comfortable experience you enjoy. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm being product of track construction, the rails being laid in sections joined together, each joint creating potential for noise, for wear, for maintenance challenges, yet also creating this rhythm, this sound, this clickety-clack that defines rail travel. The engineering trade-off being that continuous welded rail eliminates the sound, but the traditional jointed rail creates it. Some modern railways choosing silence, this line maintaining tradition, keeping the rhythm, preserving the clickety-clack. The heating system maintains comfortable temperature despite the cold outside. The climate control being automatic, being responsive to conditions, adjusting without requiring human intervention, keeping the carriage warm enough for comfort but not so warm as to cause drowsiness beyond what the motion already creates. The balance being deliberate, being designed, being result of understanding what passengers need, what makes travel pleasant, what serves people who spend hours in this moving space. The lighting in the carriage mimics natural light as much as artificial sources can. The spectrum being chosen to reduce eye strain, to maintain alertness without harshness, to create environment that feels comfortable for extended periods. The fixtures being positioned to eliminate glare on windows, to allow passengers to see outside without their own reflections obscuring the view. The attention to these details being what distinguishes good design from adequate design. The clickety-clack continues through all of this, through the technical systems and engineering solutions, through the accumulated knowledge and careful maintenance, through the complexity that makes this journey possible. The rhythm being simple output from complicated systems, being audible manifestation of invisible processes, being what passengers hear while unaware of what they don't hear. The successful engineering being transparent, being noticed only in its absence. The driver in the forward cabin monitors instruments, watches track ahead, manages speed according to signals and gradients, their hands and eyes executing training received over years, their responses being practiced reflexes refined through repetition, their attention being focused yet relaxed, being vigilant yet calm, being the opposite of tension, being state of readiness without anxiety that comes from complete competence, from absolute mastery of task and tools and route. They know every kilometer of this line, every curve and grade, every signal and station, the route being memorized through hundreds of journeys, through years of service, the Bergen Railway being not abstract path but specific familiar terrain, each section having character, having personality, having features that distinguish it from all other sections, the driver's knowledge being intimate and detailed, being professional and practical. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The driver hears this rhythm constantly, has heard it thousands of times, will hear it thousands more, the sound being their work environment signature, being the acoustic confirmation that motion continues, that wheels maintain contact with rails, that the journey proceeds normally, the experienced ear hearing variations that indicate problems, detecting differences that suggest maintenance needs, the clickety-clack being diagnostic tool, being source of information, being more than just sound. Behind the driver, the train extends through multiple carriages, each one connected to the next, the couplings being strong and flexible, allowing some movement between cars while maintaining connection, the articulation being necessary for curves, for the route's constant turning, the engineering allowing this long, rigid-seeming train to bend and flex, to follow the track's path, to snake through valleys and around mountains. Each carriage carries its own passengers, its own collection of stories and purposes, its own microcosm of Norwegian society, business travelers and tourists, students and retirees, locals and foreigners, all mixed together in the democratic space of public transportation, all sharing this journey, all experiencing this same rhythm, this same motion, this same crossing of Norway from Oslo to Bergen. The clickety-clack unites them all, creates shared experience despite their differences, despite their separate lives and purposes. The rhythm being common ground, being universal element, being the sound that all will remember, that all will associate with this journey. that all will hear again in memory when they recall this day, this train, this passage across the Norwegian mountains. The coupling between carriages flexes as the train curves, the connection being tested, being proven with every bend, the engineering being reliable, being trustworthy, the connection holding as it has held for millions of kilometers, as it will hold for millions more, the maintenance ensuring that safety is maintained, that reliability continues, that passengers can trust their lives to these connections, these systems, these carefully maintained components. Inside each carriage, the air circulation systems work quietly, bringing fresh air, removing stale air, maintaining oxygen levels and removing carbon dioxide, the process being continuous and invisible, being noticed only when it fails, being one more example of successful engineering being transparent, being present without announcing itself, being reliable without requiring attention. The clickety-clack continues unchanged by these systems, unaffected by ventilation or heating, independent of lighting or suspension, being purely function of wheels on rails, being the one element that requires no power, no control, no maintenance beyond maintaining the wheels and track themselves, the rhythm being almost natural, being nearly organic in its simplicity, being reminder that even sophisticated trains depend ultimately on simple physics, on metal rolling on metal, on gravity and friction and momentum. The floors beneath your feet absorb footsteps, provide traction, resist wear, being designed for durability and safety, being chosen for their ability to endure thousands of passengers over years of service, the materials being specific selections rather than random choices, being results of testing and experience, being parts of the overall system that makes train travel comfortable and safe. The overhead storage racks hold luggage securely despite motion, their design preventing bags from falling even during curves or braking, the engineering being subtle but effective, being invisible success, being what passengers trust without thinking about, the train being full of such details, such careful considerations, such applications of knowledge and experience to create reliable, comfortable travel. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, the rhythm being heartbeat of this train, being pulse that indicates life, being sound that means all systems functioning, all components working, the journey proceeding as designed, as intended, as required, the clickety-clack being reassurance, being confirmation, being the sound of success, of engineering working, of the train doing what trains do, carrying passengers across distance, across terrain, across Norway, from Oslo toward Bergen, westward, always westward, down from plateau toward sea, toward destination, toward arrival, toward rest. A steward moves through the carriage now, pushing a trolley laden with refreshments, coffee and tea, sandwiches and snacks, bottles of water and soft drinks. The wheels of the cart creating their own small rhythm beneath the larger rhythm of the train, a counterpoint to the eternal clickety-clack, a secondary percussion that announces service, that indicates hospitality, that reminds passengers they are cared for, that their needs are anticipated and met. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The main rhythm continues beneath everything, beneath the steward's movements and the trolleys rolling and the quiet transactions as passengers purchase items. The rhythm being foundation, being constant, being the baseline against which all other sounds occur. The clickety-clack persisting through human activity, being unaffected by our small concerns, our modest needs, continuing regardless of whether anyone purchases coffee or not, whether anyone is hungry or thirsty or content. The steward has worked this route for years, knows it intimately, can anticipate needs based on time of day and location along the journey, knowing that passengers become hungry around certain stations, become thirsty at certain elevations, want coffee when the afternoon stretches long, want nothing when sleep claims them in the gentle rocking motion. The steward's experience being accumulated through thousands of journeys, through serving countless passengers, through years of observing patterns and responding to needs. She moves with practiced grace despite the swaying, her balance perfect, her movements economical, everything about her suggesting competence and experience. Someone who has mastered the particular challenges of working on a moving train, who can pour hot coffee without spilling despite curves, who can make change accurately despite swaying, who can maintain friendly professional demeanor despite being tired, despite being hours into a shift, despite having answered the same questions dozens of times already today. The clickety-clack accompanies her work, provides rhythm to her movements, creates timing for her activities, the sound being so familiar to her that she probably doesn't consciously hear it anymore. The way people who live near train tracks stop hearing the trains. The way constant sounds become incorporated into silence, become part of the acoustic baseline against which other sounds are measured, the clickety-clack being her work environment signature, being present in every shift, being constant companion throughout her career. She reaches your row, makes eye contact, offers a warm smile despite her fatigue, asks in Norwegian if you would like anything, the language being musical, the words being gentle, her manner being professional yet genuinely kind, embodying the particular Norwegian combination of reserved politeness and authentic warmth, the cultural characteristic that can seem contradictory to outsiders but makes perfect sense to those who understand Nordic social norms. Perhaps you decline, perhaps you purchase something, perhaps you simply return her smile and shake your head, the interaction being brief either way, being small moment of human connection in the midst of mechanical motion, being reminder that trains are human systems despite their technology, that people serve people here, that hospitality exists alongside engineering, that care accompanies efficiency. The clickety-clack continues through the interaction, continues as the steward moves on to the next passenger, continues as the trolley rolls slowly down the aisle, continues as some people purchase items and others decline. The rhythm being indifferent to commerce, being unconcerned with human transactions, simply continuing because wheels continue rolling on rails, because the train continues moving westward, because the journey proceeds regardless of what happens inside the carriages. The steward reaches the elderly woman across the aisle, speaks to her with particular gentleness, perhaps recognizing her as regular passenger, perhaps simply responding to her age with appropriate respect, the conversation being slightly longer here, being more personal, the woman purchasing tea perhaps, the steward preparing it carefully, ensuring the water is hot enough, that the tea bag is fresh, that the cup is filled to the right level, the attention to detail being professional pride, being service ethic, being care expressed through careful work. The elderly woman accepts the tea with thanks, wraps her hands around the warm cup, resumes looking out the window while sipping slowly, the hot liquid perhaps bringing comfort, perhaps being ritual rather than necessity, perhaps being connection to lifelong habits, to decades of afternoon tea, to cultural practices that provide structure and meaning, the simple act of drinking tea being more than just consuming beverage, being participation in tradition, being continuity with past. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues for both of them, for steward and passenger, for server and served, the sound being democratic, being available to all equally, making no distinctions between those who work on this train and those who ride it, between those whose presence here is labor and those whose presence here is leisure or travel, the clickety-clack treating all identically, rocking all with the same motion, accompanying all with the same eternal sound. The steward reaches the young couple. They confer briefly between themselves, decide on purchases, the transaction being routine, but the steward makes it feel personal, makes them feel seen, makes the interaction pleasant rather than merely transactional. The emotional labor of service work being invisible but real, being tiring but necessary. The steward's smile being genuine despite being professional, her warmth being authentic despite being practiced. The couple receives their items, thanks her, returns to their quiet conversation and shared contemplation of the landscape, the snacks being excuse for small celebration perhaps, for making this journey feel special, for marking this time as distinct from ordinary days, for creating memory through small rituals, through shared food, through the accumulation of details that will later be recalled as, remember when we rode the Bergen Railway and bought those sandwiches and watched the mountains. The clickety-clack continues as their memory is being made, continues as this moment becomes part of their shared history, continues as their relationship is being built through accumulated experiences like this one. The rhythm being witness to their story, being background to their romance, being soundtrack to their shared journey. Though they probably don't consciously notice it, probably take it for granted, probably will only remember it later when hearing similar sounds triggers unexpected recall of this afternoon, this train, this time together. The steward approaches the businessman working on his laptop, asks her question, receives curt response without eye contact, accepts his decline without offense, moves on professionally despite his rudeness. Her grace under disrespect being admirable, being professional discipline, being emotional regulation that service work demands, the ability to maintain kindness despite unkindness, to continue offering warmth despite receiving coldness, to serve all passengers equally regardless of how they treat her. The clickety-clack continues unchanged by this interaction, continues without judgment or opinion. The rhythm being morally neutral, being ethically blank, simply being physical phenomenon, being sound of wheels on rails, caring nothing for human behavior good or bad, simply continuing because the train continues, because motion continues, because the journey proceeds toward Bergen regardless of how passengers treat stewards or each other. She reaches the family, interacts differently here, speaking to the children with particular warmth, perhaps offering them extra attention, perhaps giving them small treats, perhaps simply being kind in ways that parents appreciate, that make family travel slightly easier, that contribute to the possibility of this journey being positive memory for these children rather than ordeal to be endured, the steward's kindness being gift, being generosity that costs her nothing but means much to the parents trying to keep children content during long journey. The children respond to her warmth, perhaps shy at first but then opening, perhaps asking questions in Norwegian, perhaps simply accepting whatever she offers with the uncomplicated gratitude children can show before they learn guardedness, before social conditioning teaches them to be cool, before they develop the protective distance that adults maintain, the children being purely present, purely responsive, purely themselves in ways adults have forgotten how to be. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues for the children as for everyone, being part of their experience though they probably don't focus on it, probably don't think about it, probably experience it unconsciously as background, as context, as the sound that accompanies this adventure, this journey, this time with family on the train, the clickety-clack entering their memories, becoming associated with this day, becoming trigger that years later might provoke unexpected recall of childhood, of parents, of being. Together on the Bergen Railway, the steward moves on to the solitary reader, asks her question, receives polite decline without the woman looking up from her book, the interaction being minimal but not rude, being appropriate for someone absorbed in reading, who doesn't wish to be disturbed, who treats the train as quiet reading space rather than social environment. The steward respecting this, not pushing, not trying to create conversation where none is wanted. Reading the social cues, adapting her approach to individual passengers. The woman continues reading, her focus undisturbed by the brief interaction, her immersion in the fictional world being complete, being total, the train being merely comfortable chair that happens to move, happens to sway, happens to produce rhythmic sound that might enhance reading experience without being consciously noticed. The clickety-clack perhaps becoming associated with this particular book, this particular story, the memory of reading it forever, including the sensation of motion, of swaying, of traveling. The clickety-clack continues as the steward moves through the carriage, continues as she serves some passengers and passes others, continues as she maintains her professional demeanor despite fatigue, despite difficult passengers, despite being hours into her shift with hours still remaining. The rhythm being her constant companion, being present in every work day, being the sound of her employment, the acoustic signature of her profession. The clickety-clack being part of her work life, being incorporated into her professional identity. She reaches the students planning their hiking trip. They purchase multiple items, their youth giving them appetites that exceed those of older passengers, their energy being high despite the hour, their excitement about upcoming adventures being palpable, being contagious, bringing smile to the steward's face, genuine pleasure at their enthusiasm, at their joy, at their youth and vitality and optimism, the steward perhaps remembering her own youth, her own adventures, her own time when everything seemed possible and exciting. The students thank her enthusiastically, return to their planning and conversation. Their purchases spread between them on the table, their energy filling their immediate area, other passengers perhaps glancing at them with mixture of nostalgia and mild annoyance, remembering youth while wishing for quiet, the contradiction being very human, very normal, the ambivalence being what adults feel toward youthful exuberance once they have lost it themselves. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues for them as for all, being shared experience, being common ground, being the sound that all these different people with their different purposes and personalities experience together. The clickety-clack being what unites them despite their differences, being what makes them community however temporary, however accidental, however unwilling some might be to acknowledge connection to these strangers who share their carriage. The steward completes her pass through this carriage, continues into the next, the trolley rolling away, the sound fading, her presence being temporary, being transient, being service moment that came and went, leaving passengers with their purchases or their declined offers, the steward's work continuing into the next carriage, the next group of passengers, the next round of questions and transactions and brief human connections that constitute her workday, her professional life, her career. On the Bergen Railway, the clickety-clack remains after she leaves, continues unchanged by her presence or absence, being constant regardless of human activity, being foundation that persists through all variations, all changes, all the small dramas and comedies that occur in the carriages. The rhythm being eternal, being reliable, being your companion, your guide, your lullaby as you continue westward, as you descend toward Bergen, as you rock gently in the swaying motion, as you drift deeper into rest, deeper into peace, deeper into the traveling consciousness that exists only here, only now, only on this train crossing Norway. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, forever clickety-clack. In the forward cabin, isolated from passengers, the driver maintains vigilant watch over the journey, hands resting lightly on controls, eyes scanning track ahead and instruments in measured pattern. The attention being focused yet relaxed, being state of readiness without tension that comes from complete mastery, from years of experience, from thousands of hours guiding trains across this route. The Bergen Railway being not just job but vocation, not just employment but identity, the drivers, life being intertwined with these rails, these mountains, this crossing of Norway. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The driver hears this rhythm constantly, more clearly than passengers, the sound being louder in the forward cabin, being more immediate, being diagnostic tool as much as ambient sound. The experienced ear detecting variations that indicate track conditions, that suggest maintenance needs, that signal everything being normal or something being wrong. The clickety-clack being language the driver has learned to read, to interpret, to understand at levels passengers never suspect. The control panel before the driver displays information in multiple forms, analog gauges and digital readouts, warning lights and status indicators, the instruments showing speed and power, brake pressure and electrical current, door status and communication systems, each piece of information being relevant, being necessary, being part of the constant awareness required to operate this train safely, to guide it across terrain that challenges even modern technology, that demands respect even from experienced professionals. Outside the forward windows, the track stretches ahead, curving and rising and falling, disappearing around bends and into tunnels, the view being constantly changing yet fundamentally similar, mile after mile of rails and landscape, the route being familiar yet requiring attention. The driver having memorized every kilometer yet never assuming, never relaxing vigilance, never taking anything for granted despite hundreds of journeys across this same path. The clickety-clack continues its eternal rhythm, being pulse that measures progress, that marks distance traveled, that indicates motion continuing, wheels maintaining contact with rails, the train following its intended path, the journey proceeding according to plan, the sound being confirmation that all is well, that the fundamental relationship between wheels and rails remains solid, remains functional, remains safe. A signal appears ahead, the driver's eyes noting it automatically, the brain processing its meaning without conscious thought, the response being trained reflex, years of practice having made these decisions automatic, having embedded them at levels below conscious awareness, the driver's hands adjusting controls before mind fully registers the need, muscle memory and training combining to create smooth, competent operation that appears effortless but represents years of learning, practice, refinement. The train responds to the driver's inputs, acceleration smooth, braking gentle, every adjustment being calculated to maintain passenger comfort, to prevent jarring or sudden movements, to make the journey as pleasant as possible while maintaining schedule. The driver balancing multiple priorities simultaneously, safety and comfort and efficiency all being considered in every decision, every control input, every response to changing conditions. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues through all of this, through signal responses and speed adjustments, through the constant stream of decisions and observations that constitute operating a train, the sound being background to the driver's work, being constant companion to professional activity, being so familiar it has become invisible, noticed only in its absence, only when something changes, only when the pattern varies in ways that signal problems. The radio crackles occasionally with communications from dispatchers, from other trains, brief professional exchanges confirming positions and conditions, the network of humans and technology working together to ensure all trains on this line remain safe, remain on schedule, remain coordinated, the Bergen Railway being not just physical infrastructure but social system, organizational structure, web of human cooperation that makes the metal and electricity function effectively. The driver responds to radio calls with practiced brevity, confirming messages with minimal words, the efficiency being professional norm, being respect for others who share the frequency, being cultural value in Norwegian society where directness and brevity are respected, where excess words are seen as waste, where communication is judged by effectiveness rather than eloquence, the driver's sparse speech being completely appropriate, completely normal. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm persists through radio communications and dispatching, through the invisible network of coordination that keeps multiple trains moving safely on shared infrastructure, the sound being individual, being particular to this train, but being replicated on every train across Norway, the clickety-clack being universal language of railways, being shared experience across all who travel by rail, being common thread connecting past to present, connecting this moment to all moments when trains have rolled on tracks. The tunnel ahead swallows the train, darkness replacing daylight, the cab lights illuminating controls and instruments, the tunnel walls visible briefly in the locomotive's headlights before vanishing behind, the confined space creating different acoustics, the clickety-clack echoing differently, sounding louder, more present, more insistent in the enclosed space, the rhythm being amplified by tunnel walls, being reinforced by reflection, being more obvious in darkness than in light. The driver maintains the same attention through darkness as through daylight, the visibility being irrelevant, the route being known by memory, by instruments, by years of experience that make this tunnel as familiar as home, every curve memorized, every gradient known. The darkness being no obstacle to someone who has traveled this path thousands of times, who could navigate it blindfolded, who knows it through accumulated experience rather than relying solely on vision. The clickety-clack fills the tunnel, dominates the acoustic space, becomes everything, being amplified and echoed and reinforced until it seems the mountain itself is speaking, is producing this rhythm, is joining the train in creating this eternal pulse, this endless beat that measures passage through darkness, through stone, through the engineered space carved through obstacle, through the tunnel that makes this journey possible, that allows the route to continue despite mountains in the path. Light appears ahead, growing brighter, the tunnel exit approaching, and the train emerges back into daylight, into the open landscape, into the forest-covered slopes and water-filled valleys of western Norway. The transition from darkness to light being dramatic, being moment of revelation, being rebirth into the world, the tunnel being brief death and emergence being resurrection, the metaphor being obvious but nonetheless powerful, nonetheless moving, nonetheless creating small moment of relief, of gratitude for light and space and the visible world. The driver's expression doesn't change through this transition, the routine being too familiar to create emotion, the tunnel and its exit being merely features of the route, being expected occurrences, being normal parts of the journey, the driver's professional distance being necessary, being protective, being what allows continued functioning despite thousands of repetitions, the job requiring emotional regulation, requiring ability to find interesting what has been done countless times before. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues unchanged by tunnels and daylight, by darkness and emergence, by the driver's attention or inattention, being physical reality independent of consciousness, being sound that continues whether observed or not, Whether appreciated or ignored, the clickety-clack being fact, being constant, being reliable in ways that human attention cannot be, being present always, being eternal companion to this journey. A station approaches, the driver checking instruments, confirming position, preparing for stop, the sequence being automatic through repetition, the actions being trained response, the professional competence being visible in how smoothly everything proceeds, how effortlessly complex tasks are accomplished, the driver's skill being demonstrated precisely in how unremarkable everything seems, how ordinary the extraordinary becomes through mastery. The train slows smoothly, the deceleration being gentle and progressive, passengers barely noticing the change, the platform sliding alongside at walking pace, the train coming to rest with final gentle compression of suspension, the stop being perfect, being practiced, being execution of skill refined through years, the driver's satisfaction being internal and modest, being Norwegian in its humility, being professional pride expressed through quiet competence rather than boasting or display. Clickety-clack. The rhythm ceases during the stop, the silence being brief interlude, being pause in the eternal beat, being moment when the journey suspends, when passengers board or disembark, when the train rests and breathes before continuing, the absence of the rhythm making passengers notice it for perhaps the first time in hours, the silence making the sound's previous presence suddenly obvious through its removal. The stop lasts 3 minutes, passengers completing their boarding and alighting, doors closing with hydraulic hiss, the driver receiving clearance from station staff, checking mirrors and instruments, releasing brakes, advancing controls, the train beginning to move again, slowly at first then gathering speed, the departure being smooth as the arrival, being demonstration of skill, being professional competence made visible through perfect execution. Clickety-clack. The rhythm reasserts itself, reclaims its place as the journey's signature sound, the wheels rolling on rails again, the motion recommencing, the travel continuing, Bergen drawing nearer though still hours distant, the afternoon stretching ahead, the driver settling back into the routine of operation, of monitoring and controlling, of guiding this train westward across the Norwegian mountains, the clickety-clack being companion again, being constant again, being the sound that fills. The cabin that accompanies the driver's work, that marks the passage of kilometers toward destination. The driver's solitude is complete despite being responsible for hundreds of passengers. The cabin being isolated, being private, being space where concentration is undisturbed, where the work of operating the train proceeds without interruption, without distraction, the driver being alone yet connected to all those in the carriages behind, bearing responsibility for their safety, for their comfort, for delivering them successfully to Bergen, the weight of this responsibility being present but not burdensome, being accepted as part of the job, as aspect of the profession, as price of the privilege of operating these magnificent machines. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues as afternoon progresses, as the train descends through western valleys, as Bergen approaches, as the journey proceeds toward its inevitable conclusion. The sound being constant through all of this, being reliable through all changes, being the foundation upon which everything else rests, being the pulse that measures time, that marks distance, that structures experience for driver and passengers alike, the clickety-clack being shared experience though experienced differently, being common ground though perceived through different lenses, being the sound of this journey, this crossing, this Bergen Railway, this eternal rhythm that will continue long after this particular journey ends, that will accompany future passengers on future journeys, that will persist as long as trains run on these rails, as long as this route exists, as long as Norway maintains this connection between Oslo and Bergen. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack, forever clickety-clack. The afternoon sun tracks lower across the western sky, its angle becoming more acute, the light more golden, more warm in tone despite the actual temperature remaining cool. The quality of illumination transforming everything it touches, making the ordinary landscape extraordinary, revealing textures and depths that overhead light would flatten, creating this particular beauty that belongs only to late afternoon, only to this specific angle of sun, only to these hours between midday and evening, when the world glows with color it doesn't possess at other times. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues unchanged by the shifting light, by the transformation of the visual world, by the golden hour approaching, the sound being constant while everything else transforms, being reliable while beauty unfolds, being steady while the landscape reveals itself in new ways. The clickety-clack being anchor that allows you to appreciate the changing light without losing orientation, without forgetting that you are moving, that you are traveling, that this beauty is not static scene but flowing procession. The light illuminates the western slopes with particular intensity, the mountains glowing, the forests being lit from the side so that every tree becomes distinct, every branch casting shadow, depth being revealed, dimensionality being emphasized. The landscape becoming sculptural, becoming three-dimensional in ways it doesn't appear when light comes from directly overhead. The afternoon angle creating drama, creating visual interest, creating moments when you simply must notice the beauty. Despite fatigue, despite the hours of travel, despite the comfortable drift towards sleep. Your eyes perhaps open briefly if they had been closed, drawn by the golden light flooding through windows, or if they were already open, they perhaps focus now rather than gazing blankly, attention being captured by the particular quality of this illumination, by the way it transforms familiar elements into something special, something worth noticing, something that justifies the effort of attention despite the peaceful lassitude that the rhythm and motion have created. The clickety-clack accompanies this noticing, accompanies this moment of attention, the rhythm being present as you observe the light, as you watch the landscape glow, as you appreciate the particular beauty of late afternoon in the Norwegian mountains, the sound being soundtrack to visual experience, being accompaniment to observation, being the foundation that supports this moment of aesthetic appreciation, the rhythm making the experience complete, making the memory that is being formed now. Include not just the golden light, but also this eternal sound. Streams and rivers reflect the angled sunlight, becoming ribbons of gold winding through valleys, the water catching light and throwing it back, creating brightness that stands out against darker forest, against shadowed slopes, against the overall landscape, the water being highlighted, being emphasized, being made visible in ways it wouldn't be under different lighting, the afternoon revealing what midday conceals, showing what overhead sun would hide. The waterfalls catch the light as they fall, the white water becoming brilliant against dark rock, the spray creating brief rainbows in favorable angles, the falls being transformed from merely impressive to absolutely stunning, the beauty being almost painful in its intensity, in its perfection, in its temporary nature, these conditions lasting only minutes before sun moves enough to change everything, before the angle shifts and the magic disappears, before ordinary replaces extraordinary, and the falls return to being simply falls rather than transcendent experiences. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues through these transformations, through the shifting light and changing beauty, through the moments of visual glory and their passing, the sound being unaffected by aesthetics, being unmoved by beauty, simply continuing because wheels continue rolling on rails, because motion continues, because the train proceeds toward Bergen regardless of how light falls on landscape, regardless of how beautiful or ordinary the views become. The mosses on tree trunks glow brilliant green where light strikes them directly, the color being almost fluorescent in intensity, being so vivid it seems artificial, seems enhanced, seems impossible, yet being entirely natural, being simply how moss looks when lit by angled sun, when illuminated by golden afternoon light, the ordinary becoming extraordinary through nothing more than change in viewing angle, change in light quality, change in attention. Passengers notice this light, the golden hour having this effect, capturing attention, making people look up from books and phones and conversations, making them turn toward windows, making them observe rather than merely glance, the beauty being strong enough to penetrate distraction, being compelling enough to demand notice, being worthy enough to justify attention despite fatigue, despite the comfortable drift into rest that the journey has created. The clickety-clack accompanies their noticing as it accompanies yours, the rhythm being present for all, being shared experience, being common ground, the sound that all passengers hear whether they consciously notice it or not, whether they appreciate it or ignore it, whether they find it soothing or simply accept it as background, the clickety-clack being democratic in its presence, being available to all equally, being generous in its constancy. The sunlight strikes the train itself, illuminating one side brilliantly while leaving the other in relative shadow. The carriage being divided by light and shade, creating internal landscape that mirrors external geography. The passengers on the sunny side squinting perhaps, adjusting their position to avoid glare. Those on the shaded side seeing landscape differently, observing the same mountains and forests but with different lighting, different mood, different character. The same scene viewed from opposite windows being almost unrecognizably different. The sunny side showing landscape bright and warm and inviting, the shaded side showing same features mysterious and cool and remote. The light being everything, being what determines character, being what creates mood, the objective geography being merely raw material that light sculpts into specific experience, into particular feeling, into the aesthetic reality that passengers actually experience rather than the abstract landscape that exists independent of observation. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm persists regardless of which side of the train you occupy, regardless of whether you sit in sun or shade, regardless of how the light falls on landscape or on you. The sound being constant, being reliable, being independent of lighting conditions, being present always, being the foundation that persists through all variations, all changes, all the shifting conditions that make each moment different from the last, while the rhythm makes each moment connected to all others. The golden hour continues its progression, the sun dropping lower, the light becoming warmer still, moving toward orange, toward amber, toward the intense colors that precede sunset. The transformation being gradual but continuous, every minute bringing change, bringing new quality to the light, bringing different mood to the landscape. The progression being natural but feeling almost magical, feeling orchestrated, feeling like performance despite being simply physics, simply planetary rotation, simply the inevitable consequence of Earth turning on its axis while orbiting the sun. Clouds catch the light, their undersides glowing, turning from white to gold to pink, becoming illuminated from below now as sun drops toward horizon. The sky becoming theatrical, becoming dramatic, becoming spectacle, the atmospheric conditions being favorable for display, for beauty, for this particular combination of moisture and angle and light that creates moments people remember, that creates experiences worth preserving, that justifies the existence of cameras and the impulse to capture, to preserve, to hold onto beauty that is slipping away even as it appears. The clickety-clack continues through the sky's transformation, continues as clouds glow and fade, continues as the light shifts from gold to amber to orange, the rhythm being unaffected by celestial display, being unmoved by atmospheric beauty, simply continuing because motion continues, because the journey proceeds, because wheels roll on rails regardless of what happens in the sky, regardless of how spectacular or mundane the visual world becomes. Your eyes perhaps close again now, the effort of observation being too much, the pull toward rest being stronger than the desire to watch, even this extraordinary light being insufficient to keep attention focused, the comfortable drowsiness that the rhythm and motion have created being more powerful than even golden hour's beauty, your consciousness dimming again, your awareness softening, your thoughts scattering like the clouds that drift across the glowing sky. Or perhaps your eyes remain open but unseeing, the gaze being directed outward but the attention being internal, being absorbed in the peaceful traveling consciousness that exists between waking and sleeping, between observation and dream, between the fully present awareness of complete alertness and the complete absence of awareness that deep sleep brings, the middle state being where you have spent much of this journey, being where the rhythm and motion naturally lead, being where comfort resides. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm rocks you deeper into this state, carries you further into peace, the sound and motion combining with the golden light to create perfect conditions for rest, for the deep relaxation that heals, for the quiet that restores, for the peace that renews, the journey being opportunity for restoration, for renewal, for the recovery of resources depleted by daily life, by work and stress and the constant demands of modern existence. The light continues changing, will continue changing until darkness falls completely, the progression being inevitable, being natural, being the result of planetary motion that has continued for billions of years, that will continue for billions more, the Earth turning, the sun appearing to move though really remaining stationary while we spin beneath it, the illusion being so complete that even knowing the truth doesn't change perception, doesn't prevent us from experiencing sunset as sun, moving rather than earth turning. The golden light fills the carriage, makes dust motes visible floating in air, creates sense of warmth despite temperature being controlled artificially, creates mood that is peaceful and nostalgic, that brings memories of other golden hours, other late afternoons, other times when light was like this, when the world glowed with this particular beauty, when moments felt suspended, felt eternal, felt worth preserving though they could not be held. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues being your companion through all of this, through the golden light and approaching evening, through the transformation of the visual world and the deepening of your rest, through the hours that have passed since Oslo and the hours that remain until Bergen. The sound being constant, being reliable, being the thread that runs through the entire journey, that connects beginning to middle to end, that makes this experience unified, that transforms disconnected moments into coherent whole, into single journey, into complete crossing of Norway from east to west, from capital to coast, from Oslo to Bergen, carried by this rhythm, rocked by this motion, accompanied by this eternal clickety-clack that will remain with you long after the journey ends, that will echo in memory, that will return unexpectedly when you hear similar sounds or feel similar motions, that will always, forever, remind you of this afternoon, this train, this crossing of the Norwegian mountains. In golden light, in peaceful rhythm, in gentle motion toward Bergen, toward the sea, toward rest, toward home. The sun touches the horizon now, balanced on the edge of the world, seeming to rest there before its final descent. The last moments of day being precious, being golden, being the culmination of afternoon's transformation. The light being at its most intense just before it disappears, burning with colors that seem impossible, that seem enhanced beyond natural possibility, yet being entirely real, entirely the result of atmospheric physics, of light scattering through air, of wavelengths being filtered by their passage through increasing thickness of atmosphere as angle becomes more acute. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues through sunset as it continued through midday, through afternoon, through all the hours since Oslo, the sound being unaffected by time of day, by position of sun, by the transformation of light from harsh noon brightness to soft golden afternoon to this intense final glow. The clickety-clack being constant while everything else changes, being reliable while the world transforms, being the anchor that prevents disorientation as day becomes evening, as light yields to gathering darkness. The valleys are filling with shadow now, the sun being low enough that only the highest points catch direct light, only the peaks glowing while the depths darken. The vertical geography creating dramatic contrasts, creating patterns of light and shadow that emphasize the landscape's relief, that make it clear we are traveling through mountains, through terrain that rises and falls dramatically, through geography that challenges and inspires, that has shaped Norwegian history and culture, that has made this people what they are. Your body continues its gentle swaying, synchronized completely with the train's motion, the hours of travel having created deep adaptation, having made the rocking feel natural, feel right, feel like the proper state of existence, stillness being what would now feel strange, immobility being what would require adjustment, the journey having transformed your sense of normal, having reset your baseline to include motion, to incorporate rhythm, to accept swaying as natural condition. The clickety-clack has become your heartbeat now, has merged so completely with your physiology that distinguishing external sound from internal sensation becomes impossible, the rhythm being both objective physical phenomenon and subjective internal experience. The boundary having dissolved, the separation having vanished, you and the train being unified now, being single system, being merged through hours of shared motion, shared rhythm, shared journey across Norway. Lights begin appearing in the landscape, houses and farms turning on lamps as evening arrives, the scattered points of illumination creating sense of human presence, of civilization existing even here in these remote valleys, of people living their lives in these mountains, making homes in this dramatic terrain, adapting to conditions that would challenge those from gentler lands, thriving through hardiness, through resilience, through the particular Norwegian combination of toughness and community that makes survival possible in harsh environments. Each light represents a household, a family, a collection of individual lives being lived in parallel with your journey. People making dinner or helping children with homework or simply sitting together as evening arrives. Their routines being ordinary to them, though their setting is extraordinary. The mountains and forests that surround them being simply home, being familiar, being the landscape they know intimately rather than the dramatic scenery that tourists admire their relationship with. This place being practical and deep rather than aesthetic and superficial. Clickety clack, clickety clack. The rhythm continues past these lights, past these homes, past these lives being lived in the mountains. The sound being heard by some of them perhaps. The train passing close enough to houses that residents hear it. That the clickety clack enters their homes briefly. That the rhythm punctuates their evenings. That the passage of this train becomes moment in their day, perhaps barely noticed, perhaps welcome as reminder of connection to larger world, perhaps simply accepted as background. Feature of life near railway. The last direct sunlight disappears now, the sun dropping below horizon. The sky continuing to glow but the source of light being gone. Hidden behind the curve of Earth. The planet's rotation carrying us away from the sun, bringing night whether we desire it or not. Whether we are ready or not, the astronomical mechanics being indifferent to human preferences, to our schedules and plans, simply continuing according to physical laws that have operated unchanged for billions of years. The sky transitions through colors, moving from orange to pink to purple to deepening blue. The progression being familiar yet never boring, being predictable yet always beautiful, being natural phenomenon that has inspired artists and poets for all of human history. The sunset being one of those experiences that unites humanity across time and culture, that everyone has witnessed, that everyone finds moving regardless of sophistication or education or cultural background. The clickety-clack continues through these color changes, continues as day becomes evening, continues as light yields to darkness. The rhythm being unaffected by celestial events, being independent of planetary motion, simply continuing because the train continues, because wheels continue rolling on rails, because the journey proceeds toward Bergen regardless of whether sun shines or darkness falls, regardless of whether you watch or close your eyes, regardless of whether you notice or sleep. Through the transition, stars begin appearing in the darkening sky, first the brightest, then progressively dimmer ones as darkness deepens, the celestial lights becoming visible once solar glare diminishes, the universe revealing itself once local stars' overwhelming brightness no longer conceals it, the night sky being reminder of scale, of the vastness beyond our small world, of the billions of stars and galaxies that exist beyond our atmosphere, beyond our planet, beyond our ability to truly comprehend. The ancient humans who first traveled these valleys thousands of years ago saw the same stars, saw the same patterns, the constellations being essentially unchanged over human timescale, the stars being so distant that their motion is imperceptible across mere millennia, the sky connecting us to our ancestors, to all humans who have ever looked up and wondered, who have found patterns in the randomness, who have told stories about the lights in the night sky. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues beneath the emerging stars, continues as darkness gathers, continues as the visible world transforms from colored landscape to black shapes against darkening sky. The sound being constant while visibility diminishes, being reliable while the visual world fades, being present while other senses must compensate for sight's reduction. The rhythm becoming more prominent perhaps as darkness falls, as visual input decreases, as auditory perception becomes more important. The train's interior lights seem brighter now as darkness outside deepens, the contrast increasing, the carriage becoming warm illuminated space moving through cold dark landscape, becoming refuge, becoming shelter, the psychological effect being subtle but real, the sense of safety and comfort being enhanced by darkness outside, by the feeling of being protected, of being inside while outside is vast and dark and cold. Other passengers stir slightly as evening arrives, shifting positions, checking watches, realizing the journey's end approaches, Bergen being near now though still some distance away. the awareness spreading through the carriage that arrival is coming, that this journey is entering its final phase, that decisions about luggage and departures need to be made soon, the practical considerations of travel reasserting themselves after hours of peaceful suspension. The clickety-clack continues regardless of these stirrings, regardless of increasing awareness of journey's approaching end, regardless of passengers beginning to prepare for arrival. The rhythm being unconcerned with human consciousness, with passenger awareness, simply continuing because motion continues, because the fundamental relationship between wheels and rails persists, because the train rolls westward toward Bergen whether passengers are ready or not, whether they wish for more time or are eager to arrive. The darkness outside is nearly complete now, only the faintest glow remaining at the western horizon where sun has set, the last light being absorbed by approaching night, being overwhelmed by Earth's shadow, by the darkness that spreads from east to west, following the planet's rotation, inevitable and impartial, bringing night to everyone, making no distinctions, treating all equally regardless of location or circumstance or preference. Lights from houses and towns become more prominent as darkness deepens, the human presence in the landscape being more visible now, the scattered illumination creating patterns, showing where people cluster, where settlements exist, where civilization maintains its foothold in this mountainous terrain. The lights being defiance against darkness, being assertion of human presence, being refusal to surrender completely to night despite its inevitability. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm continues through the deepening darkness, continues as night establishes itself, continues as the visible world reduces to scattered lights and black shapes, the sound being your primary connection to the journey now, sight being less useful, less informative, less capable of showing the landscape through which you pass, the clickety-clack becoming more important, becoming primary sense of motion, becoming the main indicator that the journey continues, that progress proceeds, that
Bergen approaches.
Rest deeper now as darkness falls, let the night embrace you, let the rhythm carry you through the final hours, let the gentle motion rock you into deepest peace, the journey being nearly complete, the crossing almost accomplished, Bergen waiting ahead in the darkness. The city by the sea drawing nearer with each click, with each clack, with each revolution of the wheels, with each meter of track that passes beneath, the destination approaching though still invisible, still hidden in darkness, still existing as future rather than present, the arrival being certain but not yet, still traveling, still moving, still rocking gently through Norwegian night, still being carried westward by this train, this rhythm, this eternal clickety-clack. The train curves through the darkness, the route being followed by instruments now rather than visual references, by the driver's knowledge and technology's precision rather than by seeing the track ahead. The journey continuing safely despite darkness, despite reduced visibility, the systems working perfectly, the driver guiding surely, the train responding correctly, everything proceeding as designed, as intended, as practiced thousands of times before, the darkness being no obstacle to completion, being no barrier to arrival, being merely change in lighting conditions that doesn't alter the fundamental reality of rails and wheels and motion and destination. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. The rhythm persists through everything, through sunset and darkness, through the hours that have passed and the time that remains, through all the changes and transformations that this journey has contained. The sound being the one constant, being the reliable presence, being the thread that connects all moments into single experience, being the signature of this journey, being what you will remember when you recall this crossing of Norway, this afternoon and evening on the Bergen Railway, this passage from Oslo to Bergen, this journey through mountains and darkness, this traveling meditation, this moving rest, this peaceful passage through the Norwegian night, clickety-clack, clickety-clack, forever and always clickety-clack, carrying you onward, carrying you westward, carrying you home to Bergen, to the sea, to arrival, to rest, to completion, the rhythm eternal, the motion constant, the journey continuing into the night, toward Bergen, toward the end, toward home. Mordal Station appears almost unexpectedly, a junction in the wilderness at 867 meters elevation. This remote station serves as the connection point between the Bergen Line and the Flam Railway, that famous branch line that descends from here to the fjord floor in just 20 kilometers, dropping more than 850 meters in one of the steepest standard railway grades in the world. 3 platforms serve Mordal, meeting point of routes, crossroads in the mountains, human presence maintained in this isolated place solely to facilitate journeys, to enable connections, to serve the endless flow of travelers passing through. There is no road to Mordal. The only ways to arrive are by train, on foot, or by bicycle. A few cabins cluster near the station. A hotel stands nearby, but otherwise this is wilderness. Roadless country where nature dominates and human presence is minimal, temporary, contingent. Looking south from the platform, the Flam Valley drops away steeply, offering glimpses of the fjord far below. The contrast between elevation and sea level startling. The vertical geography of Western Norway revealing itself dramatically. The clickety clack resumes as our train departs Mordal, the rhythm reasserting itself after the brief pause, the motion continuing, the journey proceeding. We leave the junction behind, entering the western descent in earnest now, beginning the long drop from plateau to coast, the reversal of all the climbing we did from Oslo, the elevation about to be surrendered in exchange for proximity to the sea. The landscape transforms rapidly now. We are dropping from plateau toward coast, passing through multiple ecological zones in quick succession. Trees reappear, first as scattered individuals clinging to sheltered spots, then as small groves, then as true forest, growing denser and taller as we descend and the climate becomes less harsh. The transition from tundra to forest happening over mere kilometers, compressed by the steep terrain, the vegetation zones stacked vertically rather than spread horizontally. Waterfalls appear on the mountainsides, silver ribbons of water dropping from heights above, falling hundreds of meters in single drops or cascading down in steps and slides. This water comes from the plateau, from snowmelt and rain, gathering in streams that find the easiest route downward, accelerating as the land steepens, gaining energy, carving ever deeper channels into rock. The sound of falling water becomes constant, audible through the train windows, a background roar that speaks of power and persistence, of water's eternal work shaping the landscape. The clickety-clack continues its eternal rhythm, unchanged by the shifting landscape, unaffected by waterfalls and forests, constant as it has been throughout this journey, as it will remain until Bergen. This sound is your anchor, your touchstone, the fixed point against which all change is measured. The rhythm structures time, makes the passage of hours perceptible, transforms travel into meditation, into this peaceful state between waking and sleeping, between observation and dream. The Graveholes Tunnel swallows us, 5 kilometers of engineered space through solid mountain. When this tunnel was completed more than a century ago, it was considered a marvel testament to determination and skill. Workers advanced slowly through gneiss, drilling by hand in the early years, setting charges, removing rubble, drilling again, working from both ends, hoping their calculations were correct, hoping they would meet in the middle. And they did, the 2 bores connecting with remarkable precision, creating continuous passage through what had been impassable obstacle. Emerging from darkness into light, the landscape has transformed completely. The transition is startling. Behind us lies the bare plateau. Ahead lies lush western slopes, green and wet and alive. This is the moisture from the Atlantic asserting itself, clouds dumping their loads on these slopes, creating conditions where vegetation explodes into abundance, where every surface supports life, where the sheer density of biomass far exceeds drier regions. The forest here is different from eastern forests. Mosses cover everything, inches thick on tree trunks and rocks and even the ground, creating softness, absorbing water, hosting countless tiny organisms. Ferns grow head-high in places, their fronds spreading wide to catch filtered light. Lichens dangle from branches in gray-green curtains. Every surface supports life, every niche is occupied, the ecosystem being mature and complex, developed over thousands of years since the ice retreated. The clickety-clack persists, must persist, will persist until journeys end. The rhythm has been with you for so many hours now, has become so integrated into your consciousness that it might continue in your mind even after the physical sound ceases. The way waves continue in your inner ear after leaving the ocean. The way rhythm persists beyond its physical source, living in memory, in neural patterns established through repetition. Vatnahalsen station passes by, an unstaffed stop serving a hotel and hiking trails. The name means water neck, referring to the narrow valley where lake waters gather before flowing westward. The hotel has operated for more than a century, hosting tourists who come to experience the mountains, to hike trails that lead across the plateau or down to the fjords, the tourism being as old as the railway itself, travelers being drawn to this landscape from the moment the route made it accessible. The valleys deepen, sides becoming steeper, more cliff-like. We are entering true fjord country now, where glaciers carved deep trenches into the landscape, where rock walls rise vertically for hundreds of meters, where waterfalls are measured in hundreds of meters of drop, where the geology creates drama, where the landscape overwhelms through sheer scale and verticality. The clickety clack continues, unchanging, eternal, the pulse of this journey, the heartbeat that has accompanied every moment since Oslo, that will accompany every moment remaining until Bergen. Your breathing surely matches it completely now, your heartbeat aligned, your consciousness merged with the rhythm, with the motion, with the gentle swaying that rocks you deeper into rest, into this peaceful traveling state that exists nowhere else, that is possible only here, only now, only on this train crossing Norway. Jalfjell appears, a small station at 300 meters elevation, less than a third of our maximum altitude, showing how rapidly we have descended. The village here is tiny, a handful of houses, a church, existing in this narrow valley pressed between mountains and water, human settlement finding space wherever geography permits, adapting to constraints rather than attempting to overcome them. Forests become richer, more diverse, these western slopes supporting species that cannot survive in drier eastern regions. Rowan trees show clusters of red berries, mountain ash providing food for birds. Juniper grows in twisted shapes, its berries used for various purposes. Wildflowers bloom in meadows, colors brilliant against the green, visited by insects that thrive in this milder climate. The ecosystem being active and productive, life flourishing in the abundant moisture. The train curves constantly now, following valleys that twist and turn, seeking the easiest passage down to sea level. Engineers had no choice but to follow terrain here, the mountains too steep to cross directly, the valleys too narrow for straight track. The result is constantly changing views, new vistas appearing with each curve, mountains and water and forest in ever-new combinations. The landscape revealing itself gradually, in stages, maintaining visual interest through variation. Dale Station materializes, serving the village of Dale, elevation 118 meters, low enough that the character of vegetation shifts again. This is coastal forest now, influenced by the sea, milder in winter than inland areas, but also wetter, cloudier, less extreme in temperature range, the maritime climate creating distinct conditions that support particular species, that shape how people live, what they can grow, how they build and dress and organize their lives. Rivers run full here, fed by constant rain and meltwaters from above. The water is brown with tannins from the forests, rushing toward the fjord with single-minded purpose, following gravity's pull, obeying physics that care nothing for human concerns. The rivers being forces of nature, powerful and persistent, shaping landscape through their endless work. The clickety-clack persists, eternal, unchanging, the rhythm that has structured this entire journey, that has made time perceptible and passage measurable, that has created the framework within which this experience occurs. The sound has become like your heartbeat now, noticed only when attention focuses on it, otherwise simply present, simply continuing, the background against which everything else appears. Arna Station appears, serving a suburb of Bergen, the urban area reaching up the valleys, development following the railway and highway, housing spreading wherever flat land allows. Elevation here is less than 100 meters, and the air feels different, warmer, more humid, carrying a hint of salt from the sea nearby, the ocean's influence being palpable, Bergen being close now, the destination approaching, the journey nearly complete. We pass through Ulriken Tunnel, a double-bore tunnel beneath one of Bergen's 7 mountains, 7 kilometers of space beneath rock. This tunnel being relatively recent, completed in the 1960s to shorten the route, to eliminate a section that climbed over the mountain, a section prone to winter closures. The tunnel represents modern engineering solving problems that earlier engineers could not, using machinery and techniques that were unimaginable when the original line was built. Emerging from the tunnel, we are essentially in Bergen, the city spreading around us, buildings climbing the hillsides, the harbor visible ahead. This destination that has been abstract idea for 7 hours now becoming physical reality. The journey's goal manifesting, the endpoint approaching. Bergen wraps around its fjord, the city's foundation being a natural harbor, a protected anchorage that has made this place significant for more than 1,000 years. The train slows now, entering the urban area, passing industrial zones, warehouses and docks, fish processing facilities, the working infrastructure that supports the city, that maintains its connection to the sea, to fishing and shipping, to the maritime activities that have always defined Bergen, that continue defining it despite all changes, despite modernization and diversification, the ocean remaining central to Bergen's identity. The old city comes into view, Bryggen, the Hanseatic Wharf, rows of wooden buildings painted in traditional colors, their narrow fronts facing the harbor, this UNESCO World Heritage Site being the most photographed location in Bergen, the image that appears in every guidebook, the view that has become synonymous with the city itself. The harbor is busy, ferries and fishing vessels, pleasure craft and working boats, the water surface reflecting buildings and sky, creating doubled world of reality and reflection, the boundary between them blurred by gentle movement, by the breathing of the sea. The station area approaches, buildings closing in, the track narrowing to platform width, the journey nearly complete now, 7 hours since Oslo, 371 kilometers traveled, mountains crossed, plateau traversed, descent accomplished, Bergen reached. The rhythm slows, the clickety clack becoming less frequent, the gaps between sounds lengthening, the train decelerating, approaching its rest, approaching stillness, the motion that has been constant since Oslo now drawing to close. Bergen station slides alongside the window, the platform stretching ahead, covered by modern roof sheltering passengers from Bergen's famous rain. The train slows further, the rhythm fading, the motion diminishing, everything coming to rest, to stillness, to completion. The wheels stop, the rhythm ceases, the journey ends. 7 hours have passed.
Oslo to Bergen.
Across the spine of Norway, over mountains and plateau, down through forests and valleys, carried by the rhythm, rocked by the motion, lulled by the eternal clickety-clack that has now fallen silent. You have arrived. Bergen waits outside, the rain falling softly as it always does, the mountains rising on all sides, the sea breathing nearby. Rest now. The journey is complete. The motion has ceased. You are here in Bergen at the edge of the ocean between the mountains where the railway ends and rest begins. Sleep now.
Peaceful Bergen. Rainy Bergen.
Beautiful Bergen. Home now. Destination reached. Journey complete. Rest. Sleep. Peace.
Bergen.
Home.